Okay, so once again, good evening to all of you. So thank you for taking the time to be here in our majorship review for biological science. So it's 7:33, so we're just in time. So if you attended the first review with me in terms of gen ed biological science, so we will do the same process. So we have here several questions pertaining to biological science majorship. This might be asked also in your gen ed science for biological concepts and will actually be part of your majorship. Some may be very easy question, but some may be in the majorship level. But don't worry, you can use the chat box. No? You can actually PM me, direct message me if you want, or send your responses to everyone if you want. Okay? So every now and then, I will be giving you time to answer before we reveal the answer, and then we will rationalize. Okay? So a few days to go before the October 2, 2022 board examination. I hope you have read the most salient materials, the most basic concepts. So we're going to revisit some basic concepts in biological science. We will not be able to cover all in this review session tonight, but I will be informing you of the next schedule for your biosci majorship. But what's certain is that we will be scheduling it at night, no? So that every one of you will be able to attend. But because I know some of you are working, okay? So let me go to the next slide now. So of course, our goal is to pass and even top the board licensure examination for professional teacher. I have seen some will be taking the LEPT next year, March 2023. This is also very relevant because if I'm not mistaken, 40% of the Gen Sci table of specifications would be on biological science. So this will be very helpful to you. But for those who will be taking the board licensure examination for teachers this October, this will be just the first part. Okay? During our final coaching, doon ko ilalabas yung ilang mga tanong, okay, na inahanda ko pa. Okay, so hopefully you will not be able to miss our final coaching for biological science majorship. I will devote time for that. I'm preparing the material for it. Titignan natin kung you will be answering the pre-board in biosci majorship via Google form, or kung paano natin gagawin yan. But one thing is for sure, I will be including the actual board examinations which came out in 2020 and in the recent board. But of course, the questions that I'll be showing you later are actually questions also, are parallel questions, no? In the previous board. So hopefully you will be able to answer that. Okay? So, ang tawag dito, ang hirit ko lang sa inyo, no, sa lahat ng aking mga estudyante dito, na mga biosci majors, okay? Hopefully you'll be able to sana may makapag-top naman ng board examination. No pressure, but hopefully you will be able to top the board examination this October. Pero kung hindi kakayanin, sana lang lahat kayo ay pumasa 100%. Okay? So sige, simulan na natin. Some of these questions are already familiar with you, but again, as we rationalize, I will be adding some concepts that might be helpful to you in your preparation for your board. So I hope you have your paper and pencil with you so that you can take note, okay? Although I'm recording this, you can go back later. Okay, so the first question here is, binomial nomenclature was introduced by Linnaeus in 1970s. It refers to the giving of two names to an organism composed of the genus and species name. What is the correct way of writing the scientific name of sunflower? Okay, Helianthus annus is a scientific name. I'm not going to read it. It's just the same from A, B, C, D. What differs is the way we write it. Okay, I have received already 7 responses, 8, 9, 10. Okay, thank you so much. So Everyone got it correct because this is a very basic for us bio majors. So the right answer there is, of course, letter A. So what we do for scientific name is that we italicize it. So that's the first rule. When we type it using computer, we italicize this. Okay? We do not use the regular font. Okay? So lahat naman naka-italicize. And then the second point that you have to see, the genus is in capital letter and the species is in small letter. Okay? So pag tinanong sa board exam, how do you call these two parts? Of course, that's genus and species. Species is always with S. Species is in singular form. Okay? And laging tinatanong din sa LEPT, okay, ano yung unique characteristic ng mga species? Okay, meron akong maagang bisita. Saglit lang na, I'll pause for a while. Saglit lang ha. Alright. Alright, so sorry for that. But anyway, so all of you got it correct. So that's Helianthus annus. So what I'm actually saying earlier is that one of the questions sa let then is that pag tanong nila, ano yung unique characteristic ng mga species? So basically, species must, the same species actually, or a species has the capacity or capability to replicate or to reproduce. So the organisms with the same species will be able to replicate or reproduce. If the species are, for example, the two parents are not of the same species, then they will not be able to reproduce a viable offspring. So ilalagay ko sa chat box, viable offspring. So dapat ang mga species, ang parehong species ay dapat magkaroon or makapag-produce ng viable offspring. Pero kung hindi sila magkaparehas, pwede ba silang mag-reproduce? For example, magkaibang species. Sige nga, ilagay nga sa chat box. Different species, can they be able to reproduce or replicate? Yes or no? Sige nga, tingnan natin. While I'm fixing my Okay, so may no ang sagot. About iba, yes. Okay, may mga nag-private message, yes. Okay, ganito yon. Dalawang magkaibang species, for example, species A and a species B, two different species, can they be able to reproduce? Yes. Pero, hindi siya viable offspring. Ibig sabihin, hindi fertile yung offspring. Okay, baog yung kanilang mare-reproduce or not, okay? Okay, not fertile or actually sterile. So basically, for example, zebra and donkey, diba? Remember that zebra and donkey are able, are able to reproduce, an offspring, but this particular offspring is not fertile. It's not fertile. And kapag hanggang doon na lang siya. It will not be able to replicate again or to reproduce again. So species of the same species should actually produce a viable offspring. So tinatanong din yan sa board exam. Okay? Ngayon, pag tinanong sa board exam, how do you call this system of classification or system of naming? We call it binomial nomenclature. Okay? So binomial nomenclature. Okay. Liger, yes, this is also another example, di ba? Si lion and tiger. But that will be not viable. It will not be able to reproduce. Okay? So binomial nomenclature, tinatanong din yan, huwag niyo kakalimutan. This is actually our way of writing the scientific name of organisms or species. Okay? So basically, yung ating mga banknotes in the Philippines, okay, follow the binomial nomenclature. We include here the flora. For the coins, there are flora, and then for the banknotes, there are fauna or animals. So in this, I'm not sure if I was able to, yeah. In this one, I hope you can see this, but this one is actually a tarsier. So the Tarsius cyrita, no? So the first release of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, mali yung pagkakasulat, no? Mali yung typology ng scientific name. So nagkaroon ng statement, no, ang mga group of biologists, no? And they were able to ask the Bangko Sentral to correct, no, the way these scientific names are written in the banknotes. So ngayon, kung titignan niyo yung mga pera ninyo, may pera ba ako dito? Kung titignan yung mga pera nyo, dapat, no, tama na yung pagkakalimbag, which is of course italicized and tawag dito, naka-italic siya and capitalize yung genus, and of course, yung species ay maliit. Okay? So yun lang naman mga sample dyan. Tarsier for 200. Then you have your South Sea Pearl, no, for 1,000. Pink Dada Maxima. So for 1,000. And then we have also our coins, no? So we have here Apolinario Mabine for the 10 peso coin, the Kappa plant, which is your flora, Medenilia magnifica. Okay, although sa Bangko Sentral, wala na yung scientific name for the coins, only in the banknotes, yung sa mga papel. So this is Kappa. Then we also have Andres Bonifacio, Tayabak plant, no? Stronglydon macrobotris, no? Anuhin nyo lang sila, pasadahan nyo lang sila. Kunyari, no, sa paghahawak nyo ng pera, tignan-tignan nyo lang din yung mga plants na to or mga animals na to, kung papel yung hawak nyo, baka lumabas, no, sa board exam sa biology majorship. Then Jose Rizal, very common money, common coin, waling-waling, no, Vanda Sander, yan. Okay, so very important si Rizal kasi Rizal is a mandated course, no, in the curriculum, especially in higher education, because of what Republic Act. Ano na nga Republic Act, yung teaching of Rizal? Nag-Gen Ed Social Science na kayo, di ba? Sige nga, try nga natin, tignan ko nga. Okay, that's correct. RA 1425. Sa piso, which is 1, may 4 na 25. So that is RA 1425. Para hindi nyo makakalimutan, si Rizal ay nasa piso, sa isang piso, may 4 na 25. So that's 1425. Next, we also have the Catman flower, the Linia Philippinensis, no, in the 25 cents. Okay? So siguro hindi na masyadong familiar sa inyo yan. And then for the 5 cents, we also have the kapal-kapal, bagging plant, or Hoya pubicalis. No? Ito yung mga Hoya plant, nasa Hoya genus. No? We also have the Mangkono plants, Xanthostenon verdugonianus. No? It's a Mangkono plant which can be found in your 1 centavo coin. Okay? So the new generation currency banknotes of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas has enhanced design and was able to have the features, flora, and fauna of the Philippines. Okay? So next questions, if humans and gorillas belong to the same class, then they must also belong to the same blank. Okay? The same class. So kailangan belong din sila in the same family. A, B, genus, C, order, D, phylum. Okay, what's the answer? Checking if my charger is connected para hindi tayo mawala. Okay, I'm receiving answers here. Thank you so much. Merong nasa everyone, may direct message. All right. So the answer here is, if of course we belong to the same class, then that will actually, okay, lead us to be on the same phylum. Remember, no, our taxonomical classification from the uh, most inclusive, no, which is of course your domain, most inclusive yan kasi it encompasses a lot, and of course the the least inclusive or the exclusive, which is of course our species. So basically, if we're going to illustrate that, for example, no, you have for example, for the class Mammalia, okay, for the class Mammalia, the phylum is of course Chordata. So for example, if the Mammalia and the Aves, for example, for Aves, of course, your birds, Mammalia, examples, of course, humans and other mammals, okay, these actually belong to the same phylum, which is Chordata. And this particular phylum, of course, belong to the same kingdom, which is Animalia, and of course, on the same domain, which is Eukarya. Remember, we have three major domains. Sige, isa-isahin natin ulit yung ating major domains. So, let me have it in the chat box. So, of course, we have domain Archaea. So, pag nakita sa board exam, ang domain Archaea, it actually talks about the primitive bacteria. Okay? Mga primitive bacteria, or those bacteria which have been in existence for early years already. So archaea kasi, archaic, 'di ba? Sobrang tanda na, sobrang old. Archaic, very old. So domain archaea, pag nakita nyo sa board exam, tinatanong what type of organisms are this, at pag nakita nyo yung primitive, archaic, yeah, domain archaea, yan. Then the other one is of course your domain eubacteria. Okay. So domain eubacteria basically are those other bacteria, no, other prokaryotic organisms, okay, which have very unique characteristics or extinct characteristics. Later on, we have questions about those bacteria living in extreme environment. And of course, you have your domain Eukarya. So if domain Archaea and domain Eubacteria contains prokaryotic organism, domain Eukarya naman contains your eukaryotic organisms. And as a biomajor, you know that eukaryotic organisms are those which possess eukaryotic cells. These are the cells that have nucleus and membrane-bound organelles. Okay? So this is how we arrange them. So pag tinanong sa board exam, what is the highest taxon? No? Pag nakita which of the following is the highest taxon, huwag kayong malilito doon, that is domain. Sir, wala pong domain sa pagpipilian ang ilalagay kingdom. Kasi usually, sa PRC minsan hindi sinasama yung domain. Usually, they actually include kingdom. Okay? And of course, the lowest taxon, okay, is the species. So, how do you call the plural of taxon? Okay, baka malito kayo. Wala namang taxon sa tanong. Iba yung ginamit. What's the plural of taxon? That is, ano yung plural ng taxon? Taxon, pag marami, taxa. Okay? Kaya this is actually pertains to our taxonomy. Okay? So taxonomy, of course, is your science of classification. Tinatawag din itong biosystematics. So pag tinanong ko sa inyo, who is considered as the father of modern taxonomy? What's the answer? Can you put it in the chat box? Who is considered the father of modern taxonomy? Sir, bakit may modern? Sige, malalaman natin mamaya-maya. Okay, of course, that is Linnaeus. Carolus Linnaeus or Carl Lin or Carl von Linné. Okay, that is correct. Okay? Now, question, who is considered as the father of classical taxonomy? Okay, kasi ginamit natin yung father of modern taxonomy, di ba? So pag father of modern taxonomy nasa pagpipilian, that is Carolus Linnaeus. But if it's father of classical taxonomy or father of taxonomy in the early years, okay, that is Aristotle. Okay, so Aristotle also, take note teachers, Aristotle also is considered the father of invertebrate zoology. Okay, tinanong na rin to sa board exam sa Biomajorship. Pag nakita nyo sa board exam who is considered to be the father of invertebrate biology, that is Aristotle. So generally, Aristotle is also considered as the father of biology. Okay? Question. Pakilagay sa chat box, how do you call the old name of biology? So what's the old name of biology? Sige nga, tingnan nga natin kung natatandaan nyo pa. How do you call the old name of biology? We call it, sige, I'll type it para ready. Anyone from the chat box? Okay, medyo nakalimutan na siguro. Sige. Tinatawag ang biology before na natural history. Kaya ang mga tawag sa biologists in the early years are actually naturalists. So kaya pag nakakita kayo sa mga tanong sa board exam sa Biomajorship, who among the following naturalists, so this pertains to those who studies natural history or biology. Okay, of course, we have here in the example Homo sapiens. Homo is genus, sapiens is species. Okay, Homo sapiens belong to the modern human. Okay, so basically, no, some examples of phyla we need to know, no. So these are some. Sige nga, tingnan nga natin, review na rin natin ito. So for porifera, no, pag nakita sa board exam porifera, these actually are sponges. So pag tinanong sa board exam, which of the following which of the following phyla or phylum do sponges belong? So these are porifera. Okay. Cnidaria, this is where your corals, okay, corals or coral reefs are included or belong. So cnidarians, you have your corals. Ano pa? Apart from corals, ano pa ang kasama sa cnidaria? Okay. Sige nga, tingnan nga natin sa chat box. Ano pa mga kasama ng mga corals sa phylum Cnidaria, kung natatandaan nyo pa? Okay. Jellyfish. Okay. Ayan. Ano pa? Meron pa ba? Okay, sige, wala na daw. So, basically, tama ba si Renzo? Jellyfish, kasama ba yan sa Cnidaria? Yes, sir. Okay, sige. Platyhelminthes naman are, yes, si anemones kasama din. Platyhelminthes are actually your flatworms tulad ng planaria. Usually, very common na lumalabas ang planaria. So, pag tinanong sa board exam, saang phylum siya nakabilong, so you're actually will answer platyhelminthes or flatworms, so planaria. What else? Annelida are actually segmented worms. So, these are the keywords naman. No? For Annelida, segmented. Tulad ng, sige nga, what are the examples of segmented worms? That's correct, no? Tama yon. Or earthworm, leeches, that's correct. Ha? So pag nakita sa board exam, earthworms, leeches, no, you're talking about Annelida or annelids. Mollusca are actually, ayan, nandyan yung inyong mga, okay, this mollusca is actually considered as the second largest, no, phylum, okay? Because Arthropoda is the largest. Why Arthropoda is the largest? Because dito makikita ang lahat ng inyong mga insects, crustaceans, ang mga yan. Sa mollusca, yan yung inyong mga mollusk. What are examples of mollusks? Can you put it in the chat box? Anong mga example ng mollusks? Okay. Okay, mag-a-accept tayo dito. Okay, may kasama pa ba ako? Bakit parang nawala ako? Let me go to my chat. Okay, nandiyan pa ba kayo? Sige nga, say yes kung nandiyan pa kayo.
sir.
Okay,
Yes,
sige.
sir.
Ayan,
Kaso
medyo
po din namin alam.
loading pa. Okay lang. Oo, syempre 'di ba kumain na tayo ng mollusks tulad ng inyong mga squid, octopus, yung mga yan, these are considered mollusks. Okay, so pag tinanong sa board exam, okay, what is the second largest phylum, that is your mollusca, and then your largest phylum is Arthropoda. Okay, now for plantae naman, on the other hand, okay, these usually in plant kingdom, ginagamit nila yung phylum, this is actually equivalent to division. Tinanong na rin to sa majorship. So pag tinanong sa majorship, phylum for animal, what is it for plants? Phylum pa rin, but they better call it as division. So pag nakita sa board exam, phylum is equivalent to division in the plant kingdom. Tulad ng division Bryophyta, Felicinophyta, Coniferophyta, and Angiospermophyta. So basically, this is something to do with your file. Okay? So next. The middle of 1700 is marked by a number of contributions in the field of biology. Who was the famous Swedish taxonomist who classified living organisms into two kingdoms, the plant and animal kingdom? A. Anton van Leeuwenhoek, B. Carolus Linnaeus, C. Joseph Priestley, D. Lazzaro Spallanzani. Okay. So, in-categorize na to into two, right? The plant and animal kingdom. Okay, that's correct, no? Halos lahat tama. Okay, so that is Carolus Linnaeus. So, pag tinanong sa board exam, sino tawag dito, nag-classify into two, no? The flora and fauna, the animal and plant kingdom, that is Carolus Linnaeus. Si Anton van Leeuwenhoek actually developed, di ba? Remember the microscope of Leeuwenhoek, no? The very small microscope. Kaya sometimes Anton van Leeuwenhoek, no, or oftentimes actually is considered as the father of microscopy because he was able to develop, no, the earliest form of microscope, which was very useful in the study of biology. But for the discovery of cell, na banggit ko to in the previous lecture, that it is Robert Hooke who actually was able to see tawag dito, empty spaces na tinawag niyang cell. Okay? And cell actually is considered to be the basic functional unit of life. Okay? So yun. Next, Joseph Priestley. Joseph Priestley is actually was able to discover, ano yung na-discover ng element? Si Joseph Priestley na tinawag niyang dephlogisticated air. Okay. Pag nakita sa board exam yan, Majorship, who was able to discover this dephlogisticated air, this is actually Joseph Priestley, or what we know now as the oxygen. Okay, what is the atomic number of oxygen? Sige nga, pakilagay nga sa chat box because this is a very basic question also in Majorship. Remember, you have biochem. So at least alam nyo yung mga tawag dito, mga common elements in the periodic table of elements. So what's the atomic number of oxygen? Ako, bakit ang tagal sumagot? Okay, that is 8. Okay, so atomic number 8. Okay, and ano pa tinatanong sa oxygen? Remember that the oxygen is also the byproduct of photosynthesis, the waste product of photosynthesis. So pag nakita sa board exam, Biomajorship, which of the following is considered the byproduct as a waste product, that is oxygen. And of course, Lazzaro Spallanzani also contributed a lot in the field of microbiology. Okay? So ito pala, no, si Carolus Linnaeus, no, hierarchical ang kanyang categorization, and you can see the species until kingdom, and then eventually nagkaroon tayo ng domain. Okay? Then Linnaeus based his system on observable characteristics and introduced the 7 level of classification. So pag tinanong sa board exam, walang sinabing classification, kundi 7 level lang, siya yon, si Carolus Linnaeus. Question, pakilagay nga sa chat box, as of today, at present, how many levels, no, of classification do we have in biosystematics? That is correct. 8. So huwag niyo kakalimutan yan. No? The highest is, of course, the main, which was recently added. Okay? So ito pala, nandito naman pala ito. No? Joseph Priestley discovered oxygen, okay, and that plants release it as a byproduct, no, in the process called photosynthesis. So yun lang naman. Yun lang na very ano doon. Then Robert Hooke is of course your first person to see the cell, and he was looking at cork, no? It's a dead bark of a tree, no? And the great main ebaxis, which we now call as the cell. Okay? Then Anton van Leeuwenhoek, no, observed living cells in pond water using his microscope, his early microscope, so which he called as the animalcules. Okay? So pag tinanong sa board exam, lumabas na rin to, how did Leeuwenhoek tawag dito call this organism that is actually animalcules. Okay? So yon. Now, question, sir, ano na po yung animalcules ngayon? So dati tinawag niyang animalcules, pero ano ba talaga sila? What are these animalcules na nakita ni Anton van Leeuwenhoek? Any guess? Kung ano itong mga to? These are actually, okay, kasi gumagalaw sila eh. Nakita sa pond water eh. So nag-observe siya, nakita niya, oh, there are organisms which are, tawag dito, which are moving, which are mobile. Okay, these are organisms which compose of cells, yes, but what are these organisms kaya? These are, starts with letter P. Sige nga, guess nyo nga. What are these organisms? These are actually protozoa. Okay, that's correct. Now, ang tawag natin, of course, these belong to what we call, anong kingdom ng mga protozoa? That is correct. Kingdom Protista. Okay, so remember, these are protozoa, kingdom Protista. Mga basic yan, no? Pero lagi nga tinatanong yung mga yan. Okay, next. At the seafloor of the Marianas Trench, a marine biologist was able to dredge an unknown animal species. Which among the following characteristics should he consider? Okay. A, colonial. B, heterotrophic. C, presence of cell walls and chloroplasts. D, unicellular. What is the answer? Okay, so dahil animal species ang pinag-uusapan dito, which among is actually the primary consideration. Siyempre, tatanggalin na natin yung unicellular. Remember, animal species tulad ng tao, tulad ng mga mammals are multicellular. So wala na yung letter D. Wala na rin, of course, ang letter C. Why? Presence of cells and chloroplasts. Saan lang matatagpuan yon? These are unique characteristics of plants. So remember, cells of animals do not contain or do not have cell walls and chloroplasts. Okay? So dito lang tayo sa A and B. Between A and B, hindi pwede rin yung colonial. Usually mga colonials, ito yung mga protists, mga bacteria, ayan. So, dito tayo sa letter B because animal species are not capable of manufacturing their own food unlike autotrophs. Okay? So, it's actually heterotrophic. So, pag nakita yan sa board exam, that is heterotrophic. Heterotrophic is actually characteristic of an animal species. Okay? So, ayan. Of course, autotrophs are actually organisms which can actually manufacture their own food, no? With, of course, examples are plants, no? Algae, and many bacteria. Okay? Sige. How do you call the study of algae? Sige nga, pakita nga sa chat box. How do you call the study of algae? I think there was a season na tinanong din ito. How do you call the study of algae? Okay. Okay, sige. Ano? Okay. Very good, no? So these are, okay, mag-accept tayo. This is what we call phycology. Now, phycology is the study of algae. Mycology naman is the study of your fungi. Bacteria is bacteriology. Okay? I'm actually thinking of the botany. There was one question before about botany. I'll try to recall about botany. But of course, botany is your study of plants. On the other hand, heterotrophs are actually includes your animals, your fungi, then many bacteria also, especially heterotrophic bacteria. Okay? So next question. Which of the following refers to a pair of contrasting character traits that could be used in constructing a dichotomous scheme regarding fish tail? A, big tail and red tail. B, round tail and blue tail. C, short tail and long tail. D, thin tail and elongate tail. Okay, put it in the chat box. You might want to direct message me the answer, or you put it in the everyone setting. So some are privately sending their answers. Okay. Okay, almost similar. So pare-pareho kayong sagot, letter C. So the contrasting, syempre, opposite, no? Yun yung ating no, when we use dichotomous key, kailangan contrasting siya or opposite characteristic. So tingnan natin. Big and red, that's not opposite. Big is small, pwede pa. Okay? Round and blue is not opposite. Round or wrinkled, blue or red, pwede siguro. Short and long, it's a possible answer. Thin and elongate, hindi. It could be thin or thick, elongate or not elongate, diba? So the best answer here is, of course, letters. Okay? So it has something to do with your earliest form of classification in the earliest form of taxonomy. So this is what we call your dichotomous key. So pag nakita sa board exam, you have to choose the contrasting characteristic. Okay? So that is part of our dichotomous key using binary questions or binary characteristics. So the goal is to help us identify an organism, and this particular key or dichotomous key is more of visual, but still dichotomous. When you say dichotomous, two characteristics or two contrasting characteristics. So dito, no? One top fin, two top fin, long, short, single, spotted, flat, round. So these are examples of dichotomous. Okay? Has fur, no feathers, with feathers. So that will be able to identify certain organisms. Okay? Question. How do you call the class of birds? Okay? How do you call the class of birds? If mammals is class Mammalia, reptiles is class Reptilia, okay, how do you call the classes that comprises the fishes? Okay, of course, that is Apis. Okay? Kaya meron tayong, how do you call the, for example, where you can put all the birds, different birds, that which is, of course, part of our conservation, we call it aviary. Okay, so aves, birds, aviary is where you put the birds now for conservation, for breeding, especially if these birds are already endangered or near extinct. Question, kung aviary ang tawag doon sa paglalagyan ng birds, no, as part of our conservation, how do you call naman if how do you call the area? Kasi tinatanong to as part of biology education, as part of your instructional resources. How do you call a place where you can find many species or different species of plants and flowers? Sige nga, tinanong to sa sa majorship na tatandaan ko. How do you call the place where you can find different species of flowering plants, no? Different species or different flowering plants. So we call it what instructional resource yan, where students can be able to identify different flowering plants or even some ornamental plants. So we call it, of course, very very common two words, starts with letter B. That is botanical garden. Okay, so that is botanical garden. How about if the place consists of different trees? Different trees naman, mga puno naman. Different species of puno. How do you call the place? Kung botanical gardens are actually for flowering plants, how do you call naman kapag different trees? Any idea? Okay, keep your responses coming. Flores. Okay, ano pa? Okay, meron pa ba? Tropical rainforest. Okay, remember, tama din naman yung tropical rainforest. But usually, ang lumalabas sa board exam is that Philippines belongs no to a biome called tropical rainforest. Yan, lumalabas din yan sa biomajorship. Any more? Any tawag dito? Any other answer? Okay, keep your answers coming. Okay. No? Sige lang. We call it letter A. Sige na, sulat ko na nga. Okay, lalabas to, no? Baka lalabas to sa board exam ulit. We call it arboretum. So, arboretum, dyan nakalagay yung iba't ibang species. Example of which is the the Mount Makiling, no? In the university in Los Baños, no? Under the conservation of UPLB, University of the Philippines, Los Baños, may napakalawak silang arboretum where you can find different species of trees. So pag nakita sa board exam, hindi arboretum, kundi maraming arboretum, ang tawag doon is arboretum. Okay? So yun lang naman muna. Okay? So next question. There are a number of minerals indispensable for plant growth and development. Some of these are needed in big amount, while others in small amount. Which of the following nutrients is considered as micronutrient for the plant? Micronutrient. Remember, we have the micro and the macronutrient. A, boron, B, carbon, C, magnesium, D, potassium. Okay. Okay, may hindi masyadong sigurado it's okay. Yung iba, sigurado na sila. Okay, may iba din sagot. Actually, the answer is, of course, pag sinabing micronutrients, isipin nyo, hindi siya masyadong malaki no, ang amount na kailangan ng plants. So basically, that is on boron. So boron is considered as a micronutrient. Carbon, magnesium, and potassium are actually classified as macronutrients. Saan to? This is your botany, no? Plant physiology. So tatandaan, pag nakita boron, that is micronutrients in plants. So sir, what are the different micronutrients pa, no? Apart from boron, ito napakadami. But of course, tatandaan nyo yung inyong macronutrients ng ang napaka-famous na NPK, your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. These are the major, di ba? Na kilala ninyo. Then of course, you have your CHON, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Your CHON, NPK, then calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. These, okay, elements are considered as macronutrients because plants need larger amount of these elements in order to survive for their growth and development. But the rest, no, these are called the micronutrients, the very minute amount lang for your plants. Okay? So yun lang naman yun. So in our body naman, of course, in terms of percentage, andyan pa rin yung ating oxygen, which is 65% no, in our body, carbon, and then hydrogen. Tinatanong sa board exam yung top 3. So we have the oxygen, carbon, hydrogen. Isama na natin pang-apat, nitrogen. Okay? Oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen. Well, 65, 18, 9.5, and 3.2%. Okay, so pag tinanong sa board exam, what element is the most abundant in our body? That is oxygen, followed by carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. Sir, question. Pag tinanong sa board exam, what is the most abundant element in the atmosphere? What is the answer? Sige, put it in the chat box. Tinatanong din to in your biomajorship kasi that is part of your biosphere. Remember that the interrelationship of the biosphere to your atmosphere. So we're talking about the most abundant element in the atmosphere, that is nitrogen. Okay? Nitrogen. Okay, 78%. Okay? So tatandaan nyo yan lumalabas din yan sa board exam. So ito lang naman for this question. Let's go to the next. The technology that uses plants to break down or concentrate toxic waste in the soil is called as A. Bioaccumulation, B. Bioremediation, C. Genetic engineering, D. Phytoremediation. Okay, what is the answer? Sinama ko to, no? This was included, no, in my previous lecture in Gen Ed Science. So what's the answer? Bakit parang hindi kayo sigurado? Walang sumasagot or late na naman ako? Okay. Okay. Sige. Okay, very tricky yung tanong, no? Very tricky yung tanong kasi very specific yung tanong. Technology daw na gumagamit ng plants. Pag nakita sa board exam yan sa inyong majorship, at nakita ay plants, dalawa lang pamimilian natin, no? In order to remove the toxins, no? In the soil, for example. Letter B and letter D. Bioremediation and then phytoremediation. Remember that bioremediation is the umbrella term or the general term, okay, as a technology that detoxifies or removes the toxic waste in the soil. But because we have the word plant here, okay, we have to be specific what type of bioremediation. So our answer will be letter D. Okay, so tatandaan nyo yan, biomajor. Very specific. Phyto means plants. Okay, so next. So yeah, no, this is how we do it. No? So some are phytoremediating bacteria, pwedeng phytoremediating microorganisms that could actually remove this toxin. No? So ang ginagawa nila is nililinis nila so that this particular adulterated soil can be used again for planting. So ano ba nililinis nila? Usually, they remove heavy metals which are very injurious or dangerous to the human health. Especially when we actually take these, for example, vegetables or crops, no? Kaya nga in mining areas, no, where in degraded ang soil, ang magsasuffer talaga dito is the agriculture sector because the crops will be affected, will actually carry heavy metals that would be very dangerous or will have an adverse effect to the human health. Okay, so yun. Another is that kapag na-pollute, for example, ang water, pwede rin tayong magkaroon ng bioremediation. There are some bacteria, not plants, no? Kaya sa phytoremediation, we make use of plants na itatanim doon, sila yung maglilinis lupa. But also, there are also microorganisms, okay, that actually can bioremediate. Okay? Next, aside from the micronutrients and macronutrients that plants need, plants also need special sige, I'll address the question a little later. Special nutritional strategies in order to survive, like involving a symbolic relationship with other organisms in the soil. A very good example of bacteria that are useful to the plants are A. Bacillus anthracis, B. Rhizobium species, C. Salmonella typhi, D. Leptospira interrogans. Sige, mamaya ako sasagutin. Meron tayong question dito. I'll answer that after this question. Okay, good yan. May nagtatanong. Okay, good. Alright. Yeah. Okay, so kapag ganyan, no, useful, good example, no, or useful to the plant, of course, that is your Rhizobium sp. Okay. Pag usually sa sp, pag nakakakita kayo ng ganito species, no, usually genus lang ang ano to. Very tag dito, unidentified or very general pa to. Kasi pwede itong may mga ibang subspecies or this can actually be a general term for that particular organism. Okay? So Rhizobium sp or Rhizobium in general, gaya ng sinabi ko, these actually are bacteria that infect the roots of legumes, no, or leguminous plants. No? For example, of legumes, ito yung mga plants na may sunod-sunod na mga pods na ubuto. No? Like for example, your sitaw is a legume, your kakahuate is a legume. No? So yung mga yan, mga legumes yan. No? This leading to the formation of lumps or nodules where the nitrogen fixation takes place. So about 90% of legume species can become nodulated. And these have some And what type of relationship do they have? So they have a mutualistic relationship. These plants in the rhizobium has mutualistic relation. Okay? So that is on your rhizobium. May tanong about eutrophication. Okay? Sa eutrophication naman, yung bioremediation kasi sa good technology we remove the toxic waste. Ang tanong is, under po ba dito yung eutrophication, hypertrophication? Hindi. Actually, for eutrophication, it's the presence of algae kaya nagkakaroon ng algal bloom and eventually fish kill because nadideplete yung oxygen. So pag na-deplete yung oxygen, for example, in the case of sea communities or marine ecosystem, ang mangyayari is walang pagkukunan ng source yung mga aquatic organisms, eventually they will die. Magkakaroon ng fish kill. No? So basically, that is eutrophication, or kapag nakita nyo doon sa board exam, which will actually lead to algal bloom, okay? Na magkakaroon usually ng red tide. Okay, so yun yun. Okay, so next. So anthrax naman, no, Anthrax bacillus or Bacillus anthracis was the first bacterium, no, shown to be the cause of the disease under the Koch's postulate, no. Si Robert Koch or Koch, no? So depende yan sa the pronunciation. No? Robert Koch grew the organism in pure culture, demonstrated its ability to form endospores and produce experimental anthrax by injecting it into animals. So anthrax is a disease of domesticated or even the wild animal. So basically, it is not a useful bacteria. Okay, it's not a useful organism, kaya hindi siya pwedeng piliin dun sa ating topic. Okay? So next, we have next question. In classification, as one moves up the classification scheme from species to kingdom, there is a decreasing blank. A, diversity. B, individuality. C, similarity. D, unity. So from species to kingdom, there is a decreasing blank. Okay? Ano siya? A, B, C, or D? Okay. Okay. So actually, there is what we call decreasing similarity. Remember, from species to kingdom, no, very exclusive na kasi yung sa baba, then most inclusive na yung sa taas. So as we go up from species to kingdom, the similarity is actually decreases already. Kasi those under or those in the lower taxa or in the lower taxons are usually the very similar. But as they move up, for example, sa phylum, so for example, sa phylum natin, chordata, phylum, for example, ng mga squid and octopus are mollusca. So as we go up, nagkakaroon ng very different characteristics already. Pero kung pababa ka, yung Homo sapiens, meron tayong Homo erectus, meron tayong Homo habilis. That, of course, has very almost similar characteristics. Pero siyempre may mga slight differences kung anong pagkakaiba ng Homo sapiens, sa Homo habilis, sa Homo erectus, sa Homo luzonensis, yung very recent, no? Baka tanungin din sa board exam, ilagay ko sa chat box, Homo luzonensis, no? Which is one of the recent species, no, of humans found in the Philippines. Okay? In Calao Cave. If I'm not mistaken, it's in Calao Cave in Tuguegarao, in Cagayan. Okay, I'm not sure if it's in Tuguegarao, but it's in Cagayan. Calao Cave in in Cagayan. Okay, one of the recent species of human. Okay, next. So yan yun, no? So of course, the life has different domains, kingdoms, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. So I assume, no, as bio majors, alam nyo na to, na sa ulado ninyo na to from species to domain. So remember our mnemonics. Okay, Don King Philip came to order fresh green spinach. So you will be able to understand. Okay, Don King Philip came to order fresh green spinach. Or, dream kong pumasa cause our family gusto sahod. No? So it's up to you how will you actually use mnemonics for that. Okay, next question. In the binomial system classification, an organism is given two names. what is it composed of? A, class and species name. B, family and species name. C, order and species name. D, species and genus name. Very easy question, very elementary. No further explanation. Of course, that is letter D. Species and genus name. SG, diba? So, species and genus. Okay? So, wala naman dito. Hindi pwede to, class, no? Family, no? Order, no? So, syempre, mauuna dyan, of course, your, in binomial classification, genus, species. Homo sapiens, Mangifera indica, Oryza sativa. O, sana hindi nyo makakalimutan, ha? Oryza sativa. Okay? That is your rice. Okay? Rice or Rhiza sativa. So pag tinanong, what is the scientific name of the staple food of the Filipinos? O ganon, hindi sinabing rice. Okay, what is the scientific name of the staple food of the Filipinos? That is Rhiza sativa, because the staple food of the Filipinos is rice or palay. No, the palay, no? Or rice. Okay, next. Next question. Ayan, no? This is binomial two-name system. Canis familiaris, your dog. No? Panthera leo, no? Your lion. And then your Felis domesticus, your cat. Okay, so Felis domesticus is your cat. So basically, this is your binomial nomenclature. Okay? It refers to the device used in determining the identity of a certain organism, characterized by the use of contrasting characteristic or character trait. A, classification. B, identification. C, nomenclature. D, taxonomic. So, pare-pareho halos. So when we use contrasting character trait, how do we call that? Okay. Yeah, keep your responses coming. Okay. All right. So, syempre, that is what we call your taxonomic key. No? Using the dichotomous key, using a binary characteristic or contrasting characteristic. So, nomenclature, it is something to do with how we name, no? How we name an organism. Identification has something to do with, of course, the analysis of the different physical attributes, so they will be able to identify whether it belongs to a certain, for example, phylum or a certain family or a certain genus. And then, of course, we're classifying them based on the taxonomic classification. So taxonomic keys, no, are useful tools for determining the identity of your organisms. Okay, so it has actually contrasting characteristics. Has 8, has more than 8, has oval, has one oval, has 2 body regions, 1 pair, 2 pairs. Things like this, or physical traits like this, are useful in taxonomic keys. Okay. Of course, I already discussed this. No, we have our 6 kingdom classification. No, this is the presently accepted taxonomic classification for organism. We have your bacteria and then archaea. I mean, bacteria and archaea. Archaea is under domain. Domain archaea consists your kingdom Archaebacteria. Kingdom Archaebacteria. So pag tinanong sa board exam, how many kingdoms does domain archaea have? Okay, so that is only one, kingdom Archaebacteria. Okay, now for domain bacteria, okay, we have your kingdom Eubacteria. Okay. Your kingdom Eubacteria na iisa lang din. While your domain Eukarya, you have your 4 kingdoms. 4 kingdoms. Okay, that is your Protista, your Plantae, your Fungi, and then your Animalia. Okay, this includes your algae, your protists, okay, your plants, your mushrooms, your molds, your yeast, and of course your animals. The different animals, including ourselves. Okay? So in the 6 kingdoms system, which kingdom is composed of true bacteria? Okay? Okay, siguro na disconnect yung iba, no? Admit natin. Okay, ayun. So pag true bacteria, eubacteria. O sige, pag ang tanong primitive bacteria, anong letters? Pag primitive bacteria ang tanong, which of the in the sixth kingdom is composed of the primitive bacteria? Ang isasagot naman ninyo ay, that is correct, Archaebacteria. True bacteria, eubacteria, primitive bacteria, Archaebacteria. Okay? How about in the sixth kingdom, which is composed of protozoa? Ano naman pag protozoa? Okay, that is your, yes, that is your protista. Okay, alam na alam niyan. Okay, very basic, no, sa bio, no. So these are true bacteria, no, prokaryotic. Remember, prokaryotic sila. Okay, unicellular, no true nucleus, no. Instead of nucleus, saan nakasuspend ang genetic material? Okay, paki-type nyo nga sa naka-suspend ang genetic materials ng mga prokaryotic cell dahil nga wala silang nucleus unlike us na mga eukaryotic cell. Naka-suspend ito sa, we call it the nucleoid. Okay, so then in the nucleoid, doon naka-suspend ang mga DNA. Okay? So autotrophs, no, photosynthesizers and chemosynthesizers, because sometimes they do not use light to synthesize, okay, to create or manufacture food. Okay? Saan ano ginagamit nila? Chemosynthesis. Okay? Chemosynthesis. Imbes na photosynthesis, they actually process using chemosynthesis, especially if the area has no light, no? Especially my extreme environment, kunyari sa ilalim ng dagat, no? Sa ilalim mga kuweba, mga ganyan, where light cannot pass through. So they use these chemicals in order for them to manufacture. Okay? So all this known fossils, the true bacteria. Okay? So here, for the Archaebacteria versus Eubacteria, so the type of environment ng mga Archaebacteria, mga primitive in origin, ay mga extreme. Okay? So for the Eubacteria, these are common. Okay? Then the cell wall for composition ng mga Archaebacteria, this actually lacks peptidoglycan. So ito, tinanong na rin to, no? Take note of this. For Archaebacteria, walang peptidoglycan sa kanilang cell wall compared to Eubacteria na meron. So Eubacteria contains peptidoglycan, Archaebacteria wala. Okay? So Eubacteria has peptidoglycan for their cell wall. Question: kung peptidoglycan ang meron sa Eubacteria, ano naman ang composition ng cell wall ng plants? Starts with letter C. Tinanong na rin to sa board exam by Majorship. Okay, peptidoglycan, Eubacteria, plant is to blank. Okay, what is the composition of the cell wall of plants? That is, nakalimutan na ata. Okay, that is your cellulose. Ayun, nahuli lang. Sige, that is your cellulose. Okay? How about the cell wall of fungi? Yeah. How about the cell wall of fungi? Peptidoglycan is the Eubacteria. Plants is to cellulose. Fungi is to blank. Letter C then. Yes, that's correct. It's chitin. Okay? So chitin is the the component of the cell wall for fungi. Mga ganito, no? So hopefully matandaan nyo sila. Kung hindi nyo man ma-absorb pa, no, but unti-unti ma-practice nyo sila. Okay? Just in case makita sa naalala ko to. Chitin yan sa fungi. Okay? So in the year 2000, a certain phylum composed of only one species was discovered. What was this newly discovered phylum? A. Bryozoa, B. Cyclophora, C. Losifera, or letter D. Microagnathozoa. Sige lang. Okay, that is, what's the answer here? That is actually your Microagnathozoa. So basically, this is a certain phylum, no, which has only one species. O, tingnan nyo, one species, because species is singular in form, okay, and singular in meaning as plural in form, but singular in meaning. Okay. So micrognathozoa is a simple gut, no? And the anus opens to outside only periodically. Then the reproductive system is not well understood yet, since there are still researches being conducted since this is recently discovered. Okay. So which of the following groups probably represent the earliest branch in the evolution of eukaryotes? A. Amoebas, B. Archaebacteria, C. Archezoa, D. Diatoms. Okay. So the correct answer is yes. These are actually archaebacteria. So tatandaan nyo yan, these groups, no, probably represent, no, the earliest branch in the evolution of your of our eukaryotes, no, in the evolution of the eukaryotes tulad natin. Remember that we are eukaryotes, ha? Tayong mga tao, humans are eukaryotes because we possess eukaryotic cell. Prokaryotes are bacteria. Okay, because they possess the prokaryotic cell. Okay, so archaebacteria, gaya na sinabi natin, the oldest organism living on Earth, no? Unicellular prokaryotes, microbes without cell nucleus, okay, and any other membrane-bound organelles. It's suspended in the cytoplasm, in the nucleoid, and any other membrane, ayun nga, and belong to the kingdom Archaea. Okay, so they were first discovered in 1997 by Carl Woese and George Pax. So, and classified as bacteria. So most archaebacteria appear like bacteria when observed under the microscope. However, they are quite different from bacteria and eukaryotes. So archaebacteria are found in very harsh condition or in the extreme environment. Diba? Nabanggit na natin kanina yan. Pag nakita sa board exam, which of the following organisms are found in the extreme environment? Archaebacteria or eubacteria? Ang answer natin will be archaebacteria. Extreme environment, tulad ng ano sir, maaalat. Okay? Kaya meron kayong mga salt-loving bacteria tulad ng mga halogen-loving bacteria. Meron din tayong mga nasa mga matataas na temperature, mga thermophilic bacteria, mga thermophilic microorganisms, and so on. Okay? So yung mga yan. Yan. Ito pala, no? Sea vents, sulfide-rich gases, hot spring or boiling mud around volcanoes. Okay? So next question, all of the following produce reproductive spores except reproductive spores. Animals, bryophytes, ferns, or fungi. Okay, what's the answer? Okay, sige, A. Oh, sige, A. That is correct. Animals, syempre wala tayo, kasama tayo doon, reproductive spores. Unlike the bryophytes, ferns, no? Sa plants yan, and of course, the fungi. Okay? Ayan. So, spore formation ng mga fungus, mga fern, no? This is a method, no? That the fungus produces the spores and germinate and produces new plants. Kaya nga, it's not advisable. For example, nakalimutan mo yung iyong gardenia bread, no? Nakita mo, siguro meron ka pang 10 pieces doon na natira. Doon sa 6 to 9 pieces, merong mga ano na doon, fungi na doon. Okay? So, kakainin mo pa ba yung tawag dito nasa level 543 na mga ng mga bread, no? So wag na kasi hindi mo nakikita yung kanilang mga spores kung saan na sila umabot. So basically unless these are edible fungi. Remember meron din tayong mga edible fungi na ginagamit sa like for example cheese production, ayan. Pero pag you think this will lead to food poisoning, then do not eat them. Okay? So next, okay. Vertebrates are animals with vertebral column. They comprise around 5% of all animals on Earth. Which of the following animals is not a vertebrate? Okay, remember the word vertebrate. Okay, a very elementary concept. Seagull, A. Sea cow, seahorse, sea lynx. Okay. All right. So the answer is letter. Okay, that's correct. Letter D. Sea lilies. No, so these are animals which is not considered as a vertebrate. Okay. Yan. So ayan no, your seagull is a chordate. No, it has a vertebral column, including sea cow, which is also chordate. A seahorse is also chordate, while your sea lily is actually an echinoderm. Okay, so that is an echinodermata, which is considered as what? Not vertebrate. So pag not vertebrate, we call them invertebrates. Question. Ano ka naman? What's your phylum? Human beings. Are you a mollusca, an annelida? Sige nga, ilagay nyo nga sa chat box. A porifera, a platyhelminthes. Ano ba kayo? Okay, that's correct. Siyempre, chordata tayo. So we are also chordate. Okay? So next, which of the following characteristics is true to a parazoan? Pag nakarinig yan sa board exam. A, presence of cells. B, presence of true silum. C, presence of tissue. D, presence of organs. Which of the following is true of a parazoan? Okay, keep your answers coming. Okay, parazoan is actually, okay, there is of course a presence of cells. Okay, ano ba yung mga parazoan? Okay, so tingnan natin. So parazoans actually differ from their choanoflagellate ancestors in that they are not microscopic and have differentiated cells. So however, they are an outgroup of the animal phylogenetic tree since they do not have tissues or organ. So remember, our level of biological organization. Tignan natin. The only surviving parazoans are the sponges, which belong to the phylum Porifera, and the trichoplax in the phylum Placozoa. So parazoans are actually only have reached the cellular level. So dahil wala silang tissue and organ, hindi na sila pupunta sa tissue level and organ level. So we're going to review our level of biological organization. What is the basic unit? Of course, you have your cell. So the group of cells, hindi usually sa biomajor, hindi niya itatanong how do you call the group of cell? Hindi niya gagamitin yung group of cell. Ang itatanong niya, how do you call the aggregate of cells? So wag kayong malilito doon. So pag nakita niyo yung term na aggregate, that pertains to a grouping. Okay? So how do you call the aggregate of cells? So what's the answer, teacher? Anong tawag? How do you call the aggregate of cells? This is what we call the... That's correct. That's your tissues. How do you call the aggregate of tissue? How do you call that? Organs. That's correct. How do you call the grouping of organs? That is your organ systems. Okay? And the grouping of organ systems compose the after organ system, we have now the iba-iba kayo sige lang, okay lang. The organism. Okay? Then, pupunta na tayo sa ecological level of organization. How do you call the group of organisms? Yeah. This is a memory test. So that is population. Question, how do you call the study of population? Wala pa kasi nasa, ang bilis nyo. How do you call the study of population? Tinanong na to sa board exam. Tignan ko nga kung alam nyo. How do you call the study of population? Starts with the initial of my name. Letter D. The study of population is? Yes, demography. That is part of our ecology, right? Population ecology. Question, how do you call the person that studies demography? Yeah. Baka itanong sa board. Tingnan ko ang mga tao nag-study ng demography. How do you call them? We call them demographies ba? We call them demographer. Okay? So, how do you call it? Again, next, how do you call the how do you call the group of population? Yeah. Call them, ayun na, bibilis, no? That is, type natin, community, right? And how do you call when you group the different communities in an area? You have now your, that is correct, your ecosystem. What are the two major components of your ecosystem? What are the two major components of the ecosystem? That is correct. Your biotic and abiotic. So pag nakita sa biotic, okay, that is pertaining to the living organisms such as plants, fungi, protists, microorganism. Abiotic pertains to the non-living aspect that, of course, has a relationship or has an impact to the living organisms, such as, of course, the humidity, temperature, water, water level, pH level, and the like. So basically, that's part of your biotic and abiotic. And the relationship of biotic and abiotic organism is studied in what field? In what field? Where we study the relationship of biotic and abiotic. Okay? Tinatanong yung mga ganyan, no, very basic question ito, ha. Of course, that is ecology. Now, question, what's the difference between ecology and environmental science? Okay, pag nakita sa board exam, by majorship, ecology studies the relationship of the biotic and abiotic organisms, while environmental science focuses on the effects of human interventions to the environment. Okay? So environmental science, tinitignan na dito, no, yung anthropogenic intervention or anthropogenic effect. So pag nakita sa board exam, yung word na anthropogenic, huwag kayong matatakot sa word na to because it actually means human-made or human-induced. No? For example, human-made activities, anthropogenic activities. So yung epekto na mga ginagawa ng tao sa kalikasan is being studied in your environmental science. Okay, next. The common bread mold Rhizopus sp belong to what group of fungi? A. Ascomycetes, B. Basidiomycetes, C. Deuteromycetes, D. Zygomycetes. Rhizopus sp or Rhizopus species. Okay. The correct answer is, okay, the rest you can guess, no? This is a safe space, so okay lang. Kung hindi sure, no problem. So that is actually zygomycetes, no? So paano yung pag hindi namin, talaga, okay, you have to resort to intelligent guessing pag wala na talaga kayong choice, no? So zygomycetes Rhizopus sp. So ano ba yan, no? Yung mga rhizopus na yan, these are actually the black bread mold. At kasama yan sa ating zygomycota or zygomycetes. But of course, ang mga familiar sa inyo ay yung yeast ninyo. So pag tinanong, saan phylum nakabilong ang yeast? Ascomycota. Okay, sana matandaan nyo yung yeast, Ascomycota, and then mushroom, Basidiomycota. Okay, including of course your rhizopus. So para hindi makalimutan yung rhizopus, Z zygomycota. Okay? Yeasts, ayan. Andyan, no? Yeast, AS, Ascomycota. Okay? Yeast, Ascomycota, and then your mushroom, Basidiomycota. Yan lang naman yung mga common, no? You also have your Allomyces, no? Part of your Chytridiomycota, and then yung Aspergillus and Penicillium imperfect fungi, which is not considered as a phylum, no? Now, nabanggit natin dito yung Penicillium nonatum. Okay, paano na-discover ang penicillium? Paano siya na-discover? Sino naka-discover? Yun na lang muna. Who discovered penicillium or penicillin? Okay, si Fleming. That's correct. Ano nang pangalan ni Fleming? What's the first name of Fleming? That's correct. Alexander Fleming. Paano na-discover ni Alexander Fleming ang penicillin? That's correct. So, serendipity. Okay? So, i-type natin. Okay. So, serendipity is actually discovery by accident. Okay? Nagkakaroon sila kasi noon ng parang experiment, no? In a certain bacteria. And then, eventually, no, he was able to discover by accident the presence of penicillin by serendipity, which is discovery by accident. Okay, so these are some fungi kingdom classification, no? Dead cold fat animals become zombies. Ayan na yung iyong mga deuteromycetes, chytridiomycetes, no? Your ano na yung ano natin, yung primitive fungi, no? For your ito naman, ito mga kingdom mycota, kaya ang tawag sa study of fungi is what we call mycology. Okay? And then of course your basidiomycetes and zygomycetes. Then ascomycetes, and then your imperfect fungi. Okay, your imperfect fungi. So basically, at least alam lang natin yung sa yeast, which is ascomycota, mushroom, basidiomycota, and then yung rhizopus, that is your zygomycota. Okay? Next, based on the protostome, deuterostome characteristics, which of the following phyla is the closest relative of the chordae? A. Annelida, B. Arthropoda, C. Echinodermata, D. Mollusca. So tayo ay chordae, ano kaya ang pinakamalapit nating kamag-anak sa different animal phyla? Okay. So we have C here, we have another C, okay? That is correct, okay? So tatandaan na chordate, echinoderm, chordata, echinodermata. To illustrate, ayan yung ating tawag dito, no, yung sequence, no, ng ating embryonic development. So you have the zygote, the fertilized egg, di ba? Pag tinanong sa board exam, how do you refer fertilized egg? That is zygote, which is of course a product of fertilization. And then you have your cleavage, no, the blastula, okay? And then you have your gut cavity here as part of the gastrulation. So blastocele, the endoderm, and the ectoderm. Okay? Next. Yan, yung protostome and deuterostome. So usually ito, no, from mga protostome will actually mouth forms from the blastophore. While for deuterostome, anus forms from the blastophore. So from mouth, protostome, anus, deuterostome. Okay, so that is some key terms that you have to remember. Okay, and if we're going to look at the relationships of these different phyla of the animal kingdom, we can see, no, that we are in the deuterostomes, including the chordate and the echinodermata, which is a very close relationship. So ito ang nearest relative ng mga chordates. So mga sea urchins, sea stars, yan, di ba? Pinakamalapit nating mga kamag-anak yan, di ba? O, sa mga sea stars, no, we do not call it starfish, no, by majors, we don't call it starfish, we call it sea stars. Okay, then sa protostomes, no, you have the arthropoda, the largest phylum, which includes your crustaceans, insects, and spiders, your nematoda or your roundworms, your mollusca, your clams, snails, octopuses, squids, ayan. Annelida, segmented worms, flatworms, platyhelminthes, yan yung mga mga key terms natin. Then Cnidaria, your jellyfishes, corals, sea anemones, and then Peripheria, your sponges. So these are the major animal phyla. So sana hindi niyo makakalimutan to. So pag tinanong mga worms, we have 3 groups: segmented, round, flat. So these are the worms. Okay? Then you have your largest phylum, your insects, spiders, crustaceans, arthropods. Yan. Then you have the mollusks, the cnidarians, and the peripheral. Of course, echinoderm are closest relative to chordates. Okay? Next question. Which among the following plants do not produce reproductive spores? A. Cycads, B. Ferns, C. Horsetails, D. Mosses. This is botany naman. What's the answer, teachers? Okay. The answer is letter, para hindi kayo sure dito, no? Sige. So the answer here is letter A, cycads. So cycads do not actually produce reproductive spores as compared to the ferns, horsetails, and then your mosses. So cycads, no, are actually if you can see in the superdivision is spermatophyta, okay, for the seed plant. So we have the Magnoliophyta, the flowering plant. So pag nakita sa board exam, Magnolidae, this is an example of a plant, a flowering plant. Coniferophyta, your conifers. Cycadophyta, the cycads. Gingophyta, the gingo. And the Nitophyta, the nitophytes. And then we have here our subkingdom, Tracheobionta, no, the horsetails, the lycopods, the whisk ferns, the ferns, the mosses, hornworts, liverworts. So this one, ito, cycads, is not producing no reproductive spores as compared to the ferns, to your mosses, and to your liverworts. Okay, next. Yan. So we have here plant diversity. Usually, ang tinatanong dito yung inyong angiosperms, no? The flowering plants, okay? Then conifers, of course, that is your gymnosperms with the pollen and the naked seeds. And then, of course, your pteridophytes, which is, of course, seedless, vascular plants like the ferns, and your bryophytes or the non-vascular land plants, which include your mosses, okay? So the bryophyta, pteridophyta, gymnosperms, and angiosperms. So, but mostly, mga angiosperms, yung mga common nating sources of food. Okay. Question next number. Not all plants bear flowers. Which of the following plants bear flowers? Yeah. Grasses, ginkgo, cycads, or pines? What's the answer? Okay. But syempre, no, kapag kayo ay lumalakad, makikita nyo nagfa-flower ito. 'Di ba? Kaya ang bilis nilang dumami. At ang hirap nilang ano, 'di ba? Pag nagpunot ka, nandiyan na naman sila kasi flowering sila, 'di ba? These are your grasses, no? So your grasses are actually bare flowers at napakabilis nila yang mag-reproduce. Okay? So very common question here. Okay? So mga tawag dito, flowering plants, gaya ng sinabi natin, yung mga Magnoliophyta. Okay? So we have the dicot and the monocot. So may mga question tayo about dicot and monocot. So for dicot, it belongs to the class Magnoliopsida and the Liliopsida for your monocots. The rest, like mosses, the non-vascular. Okay? Next, which of the following is not descriptive of domain archaea? A, it has a characteristic similar to domain Eubacteria. B, they are composed of extremophiles. C, it includes eukaryotic organisms. D, it is believed to be a universal ancestor of all life, which is not a descriptive. So all are descriptives of archaea except one. Ano kaya yon? Very obvious. Remember, archaea, no? What type of cell do archaea have? Okay? Pag mga ganyan, titingnan nyo yung mga ano ha, titingnan nyo yung mga key terms natin. O archaea, anong klaseng cell meron yan? Di ba dapat ano yan? Prokaryotic. O bakit merong ano dyan, nagulo? No? Agad-agad, mali na yung letter C mo kasi it includes eukaryotic. Remember, archaeans are bacteria and bacteria have prokaryotic cell. No further explanation, yun yun. Okay? So archaebacteria, andyan yon as similar to eukaryotes than to eubacteria. So their functions and structure of genes are more similar. But of course, archaebacteria consists of different kinds of archaebacteria that belong to all microscopy, live in various places, and most extreme environment, kagaya ng methanogens, no, methane-loving, halophiles, salt-loving, thermophiles, living in extreme hot temperature. Okay, so pag nakita sa board exam, methanogens, methane-loving bacteria, halophiles, salt-loving bacteria, thermophiles, bacteria which loves very hot temperature, no? Like for example, volcanic vents and other extreme places. Okay? Which of the following groups of organisms is a very good source of antibiotics? A. Aspergillus niger, B. Penicillium notatum, C. Rhizopus sp, D. Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Previous siya. Good source of antibiotics. Okay, nabanggit na natin kanina yan. Okay. Of course, that is very obvious answer. Penicillium notatum, no, discovered by Alexander Fleming by serendipity. Okay, so it's makes use of penicillin or your antibiotic which grows naturally in some fruits like the oranges. So pag tinanong sa board exam, in what kingdom does Penicillium notatum belong? Ang sagot ay kingdom fungi. Okay, so tatandaan, kingdom fungi. Okay? Ayan, no, Alexander Fleming, no, discovered in 1928, no, during the contaminated, no, due to contaminated bacterial culture. Ano ba kasi ginagawa nila? Yung fungus Penicillium notatum, no, na pinatay niya yung culture ng Staphylococcus aureus na ginogrow nila sa Petri dish. So it was the Staphylococcus aureus talaga yung naaral nila. And eventually, an organism was able to kill this. So that particular organism was actually the Penicillium notatum, which is of course a fungi. Okay? So alam na natin to, no, accident, discovery by accident, or fortunate happenstance or pleasant surprise, which was coined by Horace Walpole in 1750. Okay? Next, monocots differ from dicots based on the following characteristics, except A, arrangement of vascular tissue, B, number of petals, C, presence of vascular tissue, D, type of leaf venation. So what is the distinguishing characteristics? All of this except one. Alin kaya dito ang hindi distinguishing characteristics ng monocots and dicots? Okay. Alright. Okay, sige, tingnan natin kung tama kayo. So of course, that is your presence of vascular tissue. Remember that they have, no, both of these classification have the vascular tissues, no, the xylem and the phloem. So it's not really the distinguishing characteristics. The rest are, yes, no, in terms of the number of seeds, monocot and 1 cotyledon, dicot is 2. The root of monocots are actually fibrous, no? Tawag dito, very branchy ang style. But for the dicot, taproot lang yan, okay? Usually one single ano lang. Then vascular, scattered, okay? For monocot, then for dicot, ringed yan, okay? Then for the monocot, parallel veins, okay? While for the dicot, net-like or venated, okay? Then for the monocot, multiple of 3 sa mga flower niya. For dicot, multiple of 4 or 5. So basically, these are the major distinguishing characteristics between monocot and dicot. Okay? So next question, which of the following categories refers to the basic unit of classification? This is an easy question. I got the answer, family, genus, order, species. Of course, that is letter, okay, that's correct, letter D, species. Okay, so species is the right answer. Okay, tulad nito, no, we have the Canis lupus familiaris or Canis lupus or Canis familiaris. Okay, your dog. Okay, so ito, no, I'd like to include this to emphasize this. There was a question in one let's season for under the majorship kung saan tinanong nila if Linnaeus classified the organisms into 2, the plants and the animals, who actually proposed the 6 kingdom classification. Okay, tatandaan nyo, bio-major, science majors, ang nag-propose ng 6 kingdom classification, which includes the eubacteria and archaebacteria as kingdom, ay si Woos. So pag nakita sa board exam, Woos in 1977 proposed the 6 kingdom classification that we are actually using at present. Okay? Sir, dati naman, wala namang eubacteria and archaebacteria. Saan sila dati nakaklassify? Sige nga, sagot. Pakisagot nga sa chat box. Saan dati, anong tawag dati sa kingdom ng eubacteria and archaebacteria noong wala pa ito under the Woos 6 kingdom classification? Okay? What is the answer? Letter M is the start. Of course, that is Monera. So, ang Monera nun, Monerans, pag narinig nyo, nakita sa board exam, Monerans, Monera, these are bacteria. Okay? Because they are now further classified under whose classification into Eubacteria and Artibacteria. Ito yun, no? Monera. So, pag tinanong sa board exam, lumabas na rin to si Whitaker, 5 kingdom classification, Whitaker. 5 kingdom classification, Whitaker. 6 kingdom classification, si Woods. Okay, tatandaan nyo yan ha. So pareho pa rin naman, protista, your protozoa, your fungi, your plantid, and then your animalia. Sir, di ba sabi natin before we have 7 level classification. Now we have already 8 levels. Yung pinaka-recent is the domain. Sino naman ang nagpangalan or nag-classify ng organisms in the domain? Pag tinanong yan sa board exam, si Woos pa rin. Okay, in 1990. Bacteria, archaea, eukarya. Domain bacteria, domain archaea, domain eukarya. In short, domain bay. Okay. O kung may mga bay kayo. Bay, no? Bacteria, archaea, eukarya. Okay? Under bacteria, kingdom eubacteria. Under eukarya, kingdom archaebacteria. Under eukarya, we have 4 kingdoms. Okay? Ano pa ba? O, pag si Haeckel naman, tinanong, sige, daanan na rin natin. Si Haeckel in 1860, 3 kingdom lang. So sabi niya, oy, hindi lang naman plants and animals, meron ding microorganism. So lahat ng microorganism, regardless whether it's a protist, it's a bacteria, it's a fungi, nasa protista yan. Okay? And then kay Chatton in 1937, he called it as 2 empires, no? The prokaryota and the eukaryota, which is still very tawag doon, very useful pa rin ngayon because we are also classifying organisms in terms of the types of cells, the prokaryotic cell and the eukaryotic cell. Okay? Then kay Copeland, 4 kingdoms, no? Wala pang fungi, sinama pa rin yan under protista. Eventually nagkaroon ng fungi kay Whitaker. So Monera, protista, plantae, and animal. Tatandaan nyo yan. So that's part of our biosystem. Next, which of the following is not a characteristic of fungus? A, ability to produce their own food. B, cell walls made out of chitin. C, filamentous nature. D, mitosis similar to plants and animals. Okay, sige nga. Of course, diba? Pag not characteristic fungus, tatandaan mo, uy, wait lang. Si domain eukarya may 4 na kingdoms. At isa sa mga kingdoms ng domain eukarya ay si kingdom fungi. Natural, pag nasa eukarya, okay, usually itong mga eukarya na to, okay, sorry, hindi naman not all kasi meron palang isang eukarya na ano. Mostly are actually cannot be able to produce their own food or they are called heterotrophic. So that is letter A. Ability to produce their own food like kingdom animalia and kingdom fungi. Okay? So letter B, true ba yan sa fungi? Sinabi natin kanina that the cell wall component of fungi are made of chitin, eubacteria, peptidoglycan, plant cellulose. Okay? And then filamentous nature, may mga filament yan, kaya iwasan din natin kumain na ng mga naamag na kasi yung filaments hindi mo nakikita kung kahit malinis pa naman to, wala pa naman mga amag, hindi natin alam. So we have to be very careful about it. And then of course, mitosis similar to plants and animals in terms of cellular division. Okay? So we have here the eukaryotic, no? Itong 4 na to, and then prokaryotic for eubacteria and archaebacteria. So paulit-ulit na, ina-emphasize ko to kasi maraming mga tanong din in terms of classification. Okay? Red tide is a phenomenon that takes place in a marine environment. This is caused by a group of protists. Which is responsible for this phenomenon? Red tide. That's correct. Very good. So that is, these are dinoflagellates. Dinoflagellata for your red tide. So this is caused by the group of protists which are unicellular and flagellated protists. No? So the first modern dinoflagellate was actually described by Baker in 1753. 3. Okay, so they actually belong to the order Dinoflagellida, no? And botanists treated them as a division of algae named Phyrophyta after the bioluminescent form. So basically, Dinoflagellata or dinoflagellates are bioluminescent. Okay? So next, ayan, protozoa, no? So zoon, no? Animal-like, kaya ang tinawag sila ni sino na tumawag? Anton van Leeuwenhoek as animalcules. So these are protozoa that can be defined as a usually motile, magalaw, no? Eukaryotic, unicellular protists. Okay. The most important groups are the flagellates, amoebae, and ciliates. Okay. And the classification of protozoa based on the mode of locomotion, no? Titignan nyo to, tandaan nyo din to, there are questions in terms of mobility, no? Pag amoeboids, no? Yung mga amoeboids natin, mga amoeba, gumagamit sila ng pseudopodia for their motility or locomotion. Okay? Ciliates, ginagamit nila yung kanilang mga hair-like na mga cilia for locomotion. Mga sporozoa, non-motile. Ibig sabihin, na-stay lang sila. Pag na-stay lang sila, ang tawag natin doon ay mga non-locomotory or there's still a biological term for that. Sige, isipin ko mamaya. But it's non-motile or non-locomotory. And then flagellates, yan, flagella naman. So this one, no, ito ang kanilang ginagamit. So flagella, cilia for ciliates, pseudopodia for your amoeboids. And then for sporozoa, there are non-motile. So pag nakita sa board exam, no, in terms of characteristics of life, when we say motility as one of the characteristics of life, tinanong na rin yan, what do we refer, what do we actually describe? What particular process and organism when we say motility? Ano yun? Ano yung dinidescribe natin pag narinig natin yung motility? Nakalimutan na ba? Pag motility, ano yung other term? Sige, ganun na lang. What's the other term for motility, no, in terms of characteristics of organisms? Para masabi that that particular organism is living. Okay. Yung iba nahihiya. Sige, naka-direct message. Okay lang. That's correct, man. Diba? O, nakalimutan niya na. Okay, movement or motility. So that is one characteristics of life. Paano naman? Sige, punta tayo sa characteristics of life. For example, the makahiya leaves respond to the stimuli when you actually touch it, the leaves actually close. Okay. What characteristic of life is being shown? Characteristics of life lang. Yun yung tatanong ko lang. Characteristics of life. Anong characteristics of life kapag ang organism ay nag-respond sa stimuli? Starts with letter I. Okay, di ba? O, yung mga yun mga basic yan, mga basic characteristics of life. We call it irritability. So tatandaan nyo, when it has something to do with response to stimuli, that is irritability. Okay, so let's proceed. So ito, mga classification lang ng protista, no? Usually ito ang mga familiar sa inyo. The green algae, the brown, the red, and the blue-green algae. So pag sinabing mga green algae, this belongs to the phylum Chlorophyta, chloro, green, chlorophyll, chloroplast, remember? Then phylum Phaeophyta, that is your brown algae, ayan, mga magta-top 1. And then phylum Rhodophyta, that is your red algae, rhodo, red. Then phylum Cyanophyta, cyan is blue-green, okay? Because cyan is blue, no? So these are some, no? We also have the phylum Protozoa. Example is we have Rhizopoda, the amoeba, your flagellata like Euglena, Ciliata like your Paramecium, and Sporozoa like your Plasmodium. So pag nakita sa board exam Plasmodium, that is also an example of protista. Anong naaalala nyo pag naririnig nyo si Plasmodium? Naalala ba kayo kay Plasmodium? It's a vector of what particular disease? Nadala ng lamok. Okay? Malaria. So tatandaan niyo yan So it's actually major, no? So we call it the Malarian disease caused by the mosquito. Okay? So for the proteins, now all proteins, so we have animal-like that they are heterotrophic and cannot be able to produce their own food. We also have the we also have the plant-like autotrophy, which actually make their own food, no, unlike the kingdom, although they lack organs and parts, unlike kingdom plantae. And then in fungal-like, there are considered as decomposers and parasites, no? They absorb their food externally. Although they lack chitin and have centrioles, unlike the kingdom fungi, which of course have chitin in their cell wall. Okay? Next question. Ayan na. Malaria is a disease caused by parasitic sporozoans, and sporozoans are actually a type of proteins. What genus of sporozoans causes the disease? Sige. Sasabi lang natin, nandiyan pala, dapat hindi ko muna tinanong ano. So, that is letter C, your plasmodium. Okay, so plasmodium are actually sporozoan that actually causes your malaria. Next, plants are generally classified into vascular and non-vascular. Which of the following plants is vascular? A, bracken fern, B, hornwort, C, liverworts, D, mosses. So remember yung ating vascular and then non-vascular. Okay, so which is vascular among the options? Letter A. So we have the bracken fern. Remember the non-vascular here, okay? The liverworts, the hornworts, and then the mosses. Okay, so these are examples of your non-vascular. And of course, these are seedless plants. Then for your vasculars, meron din naman tayong seedless plants, lycophytes and pterophytes, and the seed plants, there's spermatophytes, which includes, of course, your fruit-bearing trees, angiosperm. So, andito yung ating mga whisk ferns, quillworts, club mosses, spike mosses, first tails, which is considered as vascular. So, tatandaan nyo itong tatlo, no? Non-vascular, liverworts, hornworts, mosses. Okay? Next, yan. Vascular plants can be divided into two, as I mentioned, seedless and the seed plants. And then under seed plants, you have your gymnosperms, your pine trees, produce seeds that are not encased in fruit. And then your angiosperms, like your flowering plants, which produce your seeds within a protective fruit. So we have here some seedless, which are made up of ferns, like your bird's nest fern, your tree fern, and their common polypody, no, as seedless plants. Okay? Which of the following is not a taxon? Next question. Which of the following is not a taxon? Okay, what's the answer? A, butterflies, kingdom, C, snakes, D, sponges. Okay. Iba-iba. Sige. Tamang sagot ay not a taxon, of course, kingdom here. So, kung nakikita, kung titignan nyo, butterflies here are type of animals, snakes are type of animals, sponges are type of animals, no? So basically, these are very similar. So therefore, kingdom here is displaced. So that is not considered as a taxon. Okay. Next, now in biology, a taxon or taxa, no, is a group of one or more population, no, of an organism or organisms seen by taxonomies to form a particular unit, which can be a basis for classification. Okay. Next, all monocots possess the following characteristics. Example, nakita natin yung monocot kanina. Is it fibrous, ang kanyang root stem? Okay. Floral part in multiples or 4 or 5. Parallel venation. Scattered arrangement of vascular bundles. Na-visualize ko siya. Kasi nasa taas yung mga monocot na diniscuss natin kanina. At napaka-obvious ng sagot. Okay? Letter B. Why? Ano siya? Dapat ay multiple of multiple of hindi nga pakilagay nga sa chat box. Multiple of 3. Yeah. So 4 or 5 is actually a characteristic of your dicotyledon. Okay? So maganda din yung visual, yung review nyo din, no? Para minsan wait lang, sa picture nakita ko multiple of 3 yung sa monocotyledon. For 4 or 5, 4 times or 5 times or multiple or 4 or 5, that's more of dicotyledon. Okay? Basic question to ha sa bio. So tatandaan nyo to ha. Tatandaan nyo yung monocot and your dicot. Okay? There are more species of bacteria that are useful than harmful. Which among the following bacteria is found in the nodules of roots? Tanong na natin to. That help plants convert nitrogen into more useful compound. Especially in the leguminous plants or in the legumes. Okay, di ba? Sir, posible po ba sa board exam ng PRC, pwede po bang yung tanong kanina ay magiging bahagi ng option sa mga susunod na tanong? Yes. Pwede rin po bang may maulit na tanong twice or thrice? Minsan thrice nga, pero usually commonly twice. Posible yon. So anong gagawin nyo? Iibahin nyo ba? Magkakaiba ba? Kunyari, ay, di ako sure kasi kailangan pag-ibahin ko yung sagot para may tumama. Ganun ba? So, minsan, kine-check din yung ating consistency. So, pag ganon, kailangan pareho na. Diba? You have to, kailangan panindigan mo yung sagot mo. Kung A, rhizobium, dapat yung susunod na tanong with the same question, rhizobium din yung sagot. Okay? Sana lang tama din yung sagot mo. Okay? So, yan. Okay, what else? Huwag mo sagutan. Okay. I'd like to point that out. Oh. Hindi pwedeng mag-skip pala, no? So, those who will be taking the LET for October, please do not skip any items unanswered. Kasi, scantron, no? Scantron kasi ang mag-check ng inyong papel. So, basically, pag hindi na na-detect ng scantron na wala ng shade, then i-invalidate niya na yung mga succeeding numbers. So, basically, dapat hindi ninyo, wag kayong lalagpas. So, kung nahihirapan kayo, okay lang naman na mag-skip ng number muna, then babalikan nyo later on. You can use the questionnaire, well, malinis naman yan, or you can bring your ruler, no? So that you can see. Kasi kung nag-skip kayo, dapat kung number 50 kayo nag-start, i-ruler nyo yun, dapat sa 50 kayo mag-shade. Unless pag nag-49 ng shade nyo, mali na lahat yung sagot nyo. So, be very careful. Pero the best is you start with 1. Pero kung hindi talaga kaya, you can skip items but make sure you go back. Kasi, ano yan bagsak ka na agad. Diba? Yes. O sabi dito, basically bagsak agad pag may skip. Diba? O kaya, very careful. No? In the previous review na ginagawa ko, what I do talaga is I ask my students to really shade their answers. Dahil online tayo ngayon, parang ang hirap mag-shade. But I'll try to send through the email yung aking ginawa ding parang how do you call it? Scantron-like na na pwede yung sagutan if you are doing drills, such as this one. Yan, meron kayong nakitang 150 item na test, you can try to answer it using Scantron. Sige, hanapin ko in my file so you can practice your shading. I know some of you are already practicing it, pero mas maganda if you can simulate that in actual. Ayan, power of C. Yan. Pag hindi nyo daw alam, power of C. Although, pwede naman yun pag wala ka na talaga, but of course, you resort to intelligent guessing or the power of elimination, you remove the other 2 options, and then between the 2 na natira, you actually choose the best answer. Okay? So good luck, by majors. So next, what do you call an extremophilic bacterium that thrive in an environment with high sulfur content, like in the Yellowstone National Park in the USA? These are actually archaebacteria, right? Those bacteria which lives in a very extreme environment. A, sulfuribus bacteria. B, methanobacteria. C, acidophilic bacteria. D, halophilic bacteria. So what's the answer? If it's high sulfur, very obvious ang sagot. Hindi na pag-iisipan. What's the answer? Sabi ko, very obvious ang sagot. Oh. Okay. Di ba, sulfur content. Di pag-iisipan, di sulfur, sulfuribus bacteria. Naku letter A. Pag sinabi hindi pag-iisipan, nandun na kasi, very obvious ang sagot talaga is, tama, may nakatama naman, tapos may, okay, ayun. Sulfuribus bacteria. Ayan. Methanobacteria, pag nakita sa board exam ko, these are bacteria which really like methane, no? Or live in area which methane is very abundant. Acidophilic bacteria are those bacteria which live in an acidic environment. How about halophilic bacteria? Sige nga, give me one word in the chat box kung saan sila nakatira. Halophilic bacteria. Power of sinagat para hindi pag-isip. Pag naman very obvious, syempre titignan nyo. Okay, that's correct. Halophilic bacteria, salty environment. Okay, very good. Question. May tinanong din, although pwedeng natanong to sa Gen Ed Science, pwede ring matanong din sa inyong majorship. How do you call the solution of salt plus water? Yan, tinanong na yan sa board. Yan, galing naman tayo ni Saline. Okay. Actually, I'm looking for the word that starts with letter B. Saline, yes, it's a general term which means it's salty, like saline water. But pag nakita sa board exam, how do you call the solution? Salt plus water starts with letter B. Of course, that is brine. Correct. Yan. Thank you, Sir Raf. Yan, brine. Okay. Question, another question. How do you call the water, okay, that meets, the water that can be found in the meeting point of a fresh water and saline water? Water and saline water. How do you call a saline environment again? How do you call the water? Ibig sabihin. The answer is yes. You call it as brackish water. Okay. Brackish water, naku, nakakalimutan niyo yung mga brackish water. Saan matatagpuan ng brackish water? In the meeting point. How do you call the meeting point of fresh water and the saline water? That is what we call the estuary. Yun yung mga sinasagot nyo. Estuary is the meeting point, the area. Question. Ano sa Filipino ang estuary? How do we call estuary in Filipino, in Tagalog? How do you call it? Yes, correct. Sabangan. Okay, that's correct. Sabangan. Okay, very good. Sige, next. Meron pa ba tayo? All animals are heterotrophic. They could be classified as herbivore, carnivore, and omnivore. Which of the following is an omnivore? Okay, sige. All right. Of course, these are your frags, no? Paano siya nagiging omnivore? Remember that frags, no, go through stages in their life cycle. No, in their early stage, there are more of herbivore. But as they become an adult frag, they eat, of course, insects, then that become carnivore. And so if they eat both plants and animals, then they become omnivore. Horses are more of, horses. Omnivore, herbivore, carnivore. Siyempre hindi na omnivore. Herbivore or carnivore? Horses. Siyempre, they eat what? Siyempre grasses or herbivore. Lions are, how about lions? Okay, that's correct. Horses are herbivore. How about lions? They are, what did they eat? What lions eat? Of course, carnivore. Carnivorous. Sheep, how about sheep? What do sheep eat? So they are considered also as herbivore. Diba? Kumakain din sila ng mga grasses. Okay? Question. Gen Ed English. No? Transition tayo to Gen Ed English. What is the plural of sheep? Palagay nga sa chat box, what is the plural of sheep? O pag yun ang tinanong sa Gen Ed English, if frag is to frags, horse is to horses, lion is to lions, sheep is to? No, bakit wala sumasagot? What is the plural of sheep? Nawala kayo agad, biglang nawala kayo. Sheep pa rin, diba? Ayan. Sheep pa rin. Walang sheep walang sasagot ng sheep sa board exam sa Gen Ed English. Alright, let's go. Okay. Carnivory in plants is usually a result of the deficiency in what element in their soil? A, calcium. B. Carbon. C. Nitrogen. D. Phosphorus. Okay. Sige. Sige. Correct. So, nagkakaroon ng carnivory sa plants because it lacks nitrogen. Remember, no, the NPK, diba? The nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, no, which are macronutrients in your plants. Okay, question. Pag iniba yung tanong, ganito yung tanong. How do you call the carnivory in plants? How do you call the carnivory in plants? Starts with letter H. Okay, ang biological term natin pag carnivory in plants, we call it, ibig sabihin kumakain yung halaman ng mga hayop. Okay, we call it herbivory. So it's actually herbivory, no? So ano yung mga example? I don't know if I include, wala akong include na example, but example of carnivory in plants is of course the some organisms which are some plants which are carnivorous are pitcher plant, Venus flytrap, sand juice, no? They basically digest insects and other animals and use that as a supplement, nutrient supplement, because the soil is deficient in nitrogen. So they have to find a way wherein they can actually compensate the nutrient deficiency in their system. Right? It's okay, no? It's okay lang. Kahit mali, at least may idea, diba? Okay, wait. Ano yung wait? Nag-wait. Alright. Anyway, archaebacteria are said to be extremophiles, meaning they live in an extremely different type of environment. What do you call bacteria that prefer to live in a very salt environment like the Great Salt Lake of Utah? A. Acidophilic. B. Halophilic. C. Methanobacteria. D. Thermophilic. Nandali lang yan. Di ba? Okay. Alright. So, remember, no, sinabi ko na kanina to, kapag salty, that is halophilic. Okay, remember, salty, halophilic, acidic, acidophilic, methane-rich, methanogen or methanobacteria, hot temperature, thermophilic. Okay? Bacteria come in different shapes, such as rod, spiral, and coccus. Which of the following bacteria is in rod shape? A. Helicobacter pylori. B. Lactobacillus aeruginosa. C. Staphylococcus aureus. D. Leptospira interrogans. Rod shape. Mga rod shape ay? Okay, that is correct. Lactobacillus aeruginosa. Okay? So, hindi ko na ilagay yung mga ano. But basically, these are rod shape bacteria, no? Mga lactobacillus. Ano ba mga alam niyong lactobacillus? Yung inyong lactobacillus casei, di ba? Yung sa Yakult. Lactobacillus casei. Your Yakult. Anong strain ng lactobacillus casei? What's the strain? Lactobacillus casei? Shirota. That is correct. Yes. Ayan. Okay, nako. Ayan, very good kayo. Sige, next. The only kingdom composed of members having a prokaryotic type of cell. O, alam nyo na dapat yan. Ano sagot? The only kingdom. Prokaryotic. Remember, domain eukarya has 4 kingdoms. So, minus na yon. Oh, remember, domain eukarya has 4 kingdoms. Animalia, fungi, protista, and plante. So, ano sagot? Siyempre, ang mga prokaryotic ay mga bacteria. Sir, wala pong bacteria sa pagpipilian. Ano ang papiliin nyo? Pag walang bacteria, siyempre, Monera. Okay, umayos kayo. So, Monera ang pipiliin ninyo. Remember, prokaryotic bacteria, Monera. Okay? Eukaryotic, animalia, fungi, plante, ano isa? Protista. Remember the 4 eukaryotic. It's okay. No pressure. Sige, next. Ayan yan. Okay? The plante, animalia, fungi, protists. Then the Monera are prokaryotic. But Monera, no, is based on the 5 kingdom classification, which is subdivided into 2 kingdoms, the kingdom Eubacteria and kingdom Archaebacteria. Okay? Very good. Sige, next. Ayan, yan yung kay Whitaker. No? Monera, Protista, Animalia, Fungi, Plantae. The 5 kingdom classification. I think, 5 kingdom classification. Question, kanina na ulit yung 6 kingdom classification? Sige nga, kung nakikinig kayo sa akin. Okay, very good. Cute naman ang mga spelling. Okay, kay Woos. Okay, kay Woos, no? Okay lang yan guys, ano, basta makita yung sa board exam, pare-pareho na yun. Pero kung ang labanan ngayon ng spelling, yun na. Kung kayo magkakatalo. Okay, minsan kasi si PRC parang iniiba-iba yung spelling, pero parehong pronunciation. Yun lang. So you have to really be very careful about the spelling. Then with Tucker, you have your 5 kingdom classification. Okay? Ayan. So alam na natin to, kaya lagi kong ina-emphasize kasi ang daming pwedeng matanong, okay, sa mga kingdom na ito. Remember, may 3 lang tayong kingdom, okay, the Bay, no? Kingdom Bay, Bacteria, Archaea, Eukarya. Okay? Madali lang matandaan, Archaea, Archaebacteria, Bacteria, Eubacteria, then Eukarya yung 4. Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. Okay? Next, which among the following areas of taxonomy refers to the ordering and grouping of population using the inductive method? A, classification. B, identification. C, nomenclature. D, preservation. What is the answer, teachers? Okay, that is correct. Classification. So when we order, when we group, no, to group, to order, to classify. Pag sa naming, nomenclature. If you're going to identify based on characteristics, identification. If you want to preserve a specimen, preservation. Question, sa mga museum, nakakakita kayo ng mga parang totoong animals na nakapreserve yung mukha, for example, ng tiger, ng lion. How do you call that technique? Where scientists or where people preserve these animals. That is correct. Taxidermy. Okay, so tatandaan niya, tinanong na rin yan, sir, bakit tinatanong ang taxidermy? Remember, meron kayong major na microtechniques and biotechniques. So kasama yun doon. Okay, so next. 3 amateur fossil hunters, Dan, Jimmy, and Gina, were able to unearth a complete fossil of a mammal. How could they determine whether it was a carnivore, an herbivore, or an omnivore? A, number of phalanges. B, presence of jaws. C, size of the lower jaw. D, type of teeth present. Okay, pag syempre, no, in terms of carnivore, herbivore, omnivore, it has something to do with the type of feeder, diba? So when we are trying to see what type of feeder is that animal, we're going to look at the type of teeth present. That is correct. Question, how do you call the study of fossils? How do you call the study of fossils? That is correct. Paleontology. Very good. So that is paleon. No? Paleon is very old, di ba? Na fossils. No? Paleontology. Ano pa pwede natin? Sige. Dahil pinag-uusapan natin yung type of feeder, how do you call an animal that eats fruits? What type of herbivore is that? What type of animals ang kumakain ng mga fruits? Gusto kayang sagot mo dyan ninyo Pero how do you call, what is the term that we use? Gusto ko rin yung term na yan Ano yan? Frugivore. Okay, sure na ba yan? Frugivore kaya? It's actually fruit eating, pwede naman. Fruit eating animals are frugivores. So frugivores are those animals, a type of herbivore that feeds on fruits. How about an animal that eats on leaves of the plant? Hindi nga, try nyo nga. Leaves of the plant. Wait daw, sige lang. Okay, naka-ready na yung sagot natin. I-send ko na lang. I-wait natin. Okay, ruminants. Okay. Actually, no, sa sa tawag dito, yung sa mga grazing animals, mga ruminants. Okay? But in terms of type of herbivore, we call this, no, in terms of sa leaves lang. Okay, we call it folivores. Ayan. Hindi na kita hihintayin sa tagal mo sabi folivore. So ano pa ba? Yun lang naman muna. Saka na natin palaliman ng type of feeding relationship. Next, in the cell, metabolic reactions that result from the breakdown of complex molecules into simpler compounds, coupled with the release of energy is called as blank. A, anabolism. B, hydrolysis. C, catabolism. D, synthesis. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of C's. So that is breakdown of complex molecules into simpler compounds. So pag breakdown, catabolism. That is correct. Okay? Catabolism. Pag ana, pag ana structure, binubuo, building up. Okay? Ana, anatomy, diba? Structure, binubuo, anabolism. Okay? Next, reproduction comes into types, sexual and asexual. When the offspring inherits all its chromosomes from a single parent, genetically identical, the type of reproduction is asexual. Which of the following asexual type of reproduction is common among hydrozoans like Hydra? A, budding. B, conjugation. C, fission. D, fragmentation. Okay. All right. So, sa mga hydrozoans, no, common is bud, no? So there is budding, no, that happens among hydrozoans like the hydra, where this bud will actually grow into new organism. And this particular type of reproduction is asexual. Okay, an outgrowth. Yes, that's an outgrowth. Okay. Next, animals show different types of behavior in order to adapt to a certain condition. In some, it could be through a conditioned stimulus. Which type of behavior involves subjecting the organism to repeated stimulation, and if stimulus is harmful, it may no longer respond to it? A, conditioned reflex. B, habituation. C, imprinting. D, trial and error. That's the answer, no? Pag repeated stimulation, and if the stimulus is harmful, hindi na siya magre-respond to it. So how do we call that particular animal behavior? Okay, what's the answer? Okay, sige, not sure yung iba, okay lang. We call it as habituation. So, organism, no, subject, no, these particular behavior, if there's a harmful effect to them, they would no longer respond to them. This is part of their habituation. Okay? So that is part, wala hindi pa nalagay. This is part of actually animal behavior. Pag tinanong sa board exam, majorship, how do you call the study, right natin, of animal behavior? How do you call the study of animal behavior in the context of biology? We call it, starts with letter E. Ayan. Okay, malapit-lapit na dyan, Ace. Okay. So, that's correct. Tama, no? Ethology. Correct. So, tatandaan nyo yan. Pag naman sa tao, how do you call the way we of course human behaviors under psychology, but when the way we actually conform with the norms of society, that's part of our ethics. Okay, so ethology for animals, then for ethics, of course, we have ethics as part of the goodness, no, in terms of what is good and what is not. Okay, all of the following are unifying themes in biology. Exam: A, cellular organism. B, molecular inheritance. C, integumentary system. D, evolution. Ito, very ano to, no? Pero I'll explain this. So pag unifying, okay? So we're looking at it as a whole, okay? Of course, ang exemption dito is letter C. Okay, so universal like cellular organism, molecular inheritance, evolution, while integumentary system is a part, no, of a whole. Because integumentary system is just one, okay, of the 11 major body systems of humans, no? Question, what are the parts included in the integumentary system? Can you put that in the chat box? Even one or two? Of course, you have your skin. What else? Apart from skin, you have your 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 hair, and of course, your nails. Okay? So basically, these are integuments. Pag narinig yung word na integuments, covering. Okay? So that's why integuments, remember, skin covers us. The hair covers us. No? So these are part of our integuments. And skin is considered to be, of course, our largest external organ. If skin is largest external organ, what is the largest internal organ? Of course, that is your liver. Okay, next question. Yeah. In plants, when roots absorb water, it passes through the xylem tissues with the help of some physical-chemical forces. Which among the following would have the greatest effect on the conduction of water upward in plants? A, adhesion. B, diffusion. C, osmosis. D, pull of transpiration. So, keyword natin dito is conduction of water upward. Keyword yan. Okay, sige. Okay, iba-iba ang sagot. Okay. Ano yun? Wait lang. Alright, so that is, yes, that is your pull of transpiration. Okay, so this is could have the greatest effect, no, on the conduction of water upward in plants, no, where of course it passes through the xylem tissues with the help of some physical chemical forces. Question. What is transpiration? So basically, transpiration is when, okay, excess water from plants are being evaporated to the atmosphere. So usually, yung transpiration na yan, if for example, the plants, no, nagre-release siya. So it's actually a release of water from plants. In other words, in simpler words, evaporation in plants is called transpiration. So pag nakita sa board exam, how do you call the evaporation that happens at the occurs in plants? We call it transpiration. Okay, question. How do you call the release of water, excess water, that can be found in the edges of leaves? My God. How do you call naman? Oh, sobra yung water. Paano mo nasabi? Tignan mo yung dahon mo, nag-release ng water sa gilid. How do you call that, that process? If transpiration is an evaporation in plants to the atmosphere, when you see naman visible, you can visibly see excess water in the leaves, no? Lalo pag umaga when you check your plants. Starts with letter G. Letter G. Call it guttation. Remember, guttation. So that is guttation. Okay? Next. Gas exchange is a big challenge to bigger organisms than to small ones. This has something to do with the surfaces, volume, ratio. It is harder for gases to diffuse in bigger organisms. To compensate for this, what do fishes and other aquatic organisms use for gas exchange? A, cell membrane. B, gills. C, lungs. D, tracheal tubes. Okay? Of course, fishes and other aquatic organisms make use of what particular part? That is gills. These are gills actually. So they actually use it for gas exchange. How about for insects? Anong ginagamit naman ng insect for gas exchange? Among the options. Ginagamit nila yung kanilang letter D. Okay, D naman. Tracheal tubes are being used by insects, okay, in the gas exchange. Another question. Where does gas exchange occurs in humans? Where does gas exchange occur in humans? All right. So, of course, the alveoli. It is where carbon dioxide uh, exits and oxygen enters. Okay, alveoli. Okay. Next question. There are different ways by which organisms regulate the amount of fluid in its bodies in higher form of animals. This is primarily the function of the kidneys. What organelle in the body of protists is in charge of this? Okay. A. Contractile vacuole. B. Food vacuole. C. Golgi bodies. D. Lysosome. Okay. So we're asking about the organelles, no? About the regulation of fluid. Yun na yun, sige. Parang may nag-slash. Ano yung slash ng sagot? Hindi sure. Sige lang. Okay. So that is, okay, ito yun, no? Of course, amount of fluid, storage, so pwede tayong pumili lang ng dalawa dito, no? Either A or B because of something to do with vacuole. So between A and B, the answer is contractile vacuole. Okay? So pag sa protists, we call it contractile vacuole. Okay? Kapag sa animals, we just call it vacuole. Pag sa plants, we call it central vacuole or sometimes food vacuole, but usually it's just central vacuole. But for protists, we call it contractile vacuole that regulate the amount of fluid in the body. Okay, next question. Ito pa rin ang pagpipilian. Okay? What is considered to be the suicide sac of the cell? What is considered to be the suicide sac of the cell? Letter D. Correct. Lysosome. Okay. Lysosome. Why is it considered as a suicide sac? Okay, ganito yan. Ganito yan. Pag mga may worn out na, then medyo old na mga cellular parts, ang gagawin yan, pupunta yan sa lysosome. And then lysosome will actually break them. So, i-dissolve niya yan and then it will actually be released outside the cell. So, kaya yung mga feeling nila, useless na sila, matanda na sila, worn out na sila, pupunta na sila kay lysosome. Then lysosome, ano mo na ako, patayin mo na ako. And then, ito kaya doon sila nagsusuicide, di ba? May kadramahan yun. Sa Japan, may ganun din. In social science, pag tinanong, how do you call when somebody has to end his life because he feels that he's already inutile or useless? Ano yan? How do you call that in Japanese culture where they actually kill themselves because they feel that they are useless. They're worthless anymore. They do what we call it starts with letter H. Natandaan nyo ba yun? Familiar ba kayo doon? It's actually called harakiri, diba? So when they actually end their life. Iba naman yung mercy killing. So pag nakita sa board exam, mercy killing, ano naman yun? Kasi lagi lumalabas din to sa Gen Ed. Pero wala yun, lumabas din sa bio, di ba? We call it euthanasia. Where, of course, mercy killing kasi you have either the family will decide whether to, to end the life of an ailing relative na parang very impossible na to exist or to survive. So that is euthanasia. Okay? So next question. Dito pa rin tayo. How do you call naman the organelles that sorts, modifies, and package proteins? Okay, that is your Golgi bodies. Question. What are the other names of Golgi bodies? Diba? Diba? Napakatawan-tamaran for ang mga person Okay, Golgi apparatus, diba? Ganun na lang. Apparatus or Golgi complex. It's actually because it was named after Camillo Golgi. So he was the one who actually discovered this. Okay? So next. Siguro na lang. Last 5, kasi syempre magpapahinga pa kayo. Sige. Para we can have another set, So this is just a preliminary, papatikim pa lang to, no? So we will have another part of this. But I will inform you if I can do I can have the next one by the weekends. No? So anyway, there are two types of circulation in the body of animals, the closed and the open type. In closed circulation, there are blood vessels where blood can pass through, no, for distribution. While in closed circulation, there are no blood vessels. Which among the following animals have the open type of circulation? A. Arthropods, B. Lampreys, B. Reptile, D. Newts. Okay, sige, we can ano pa naman, kaya pa naman, sige lang. Okay. Okay. All right, syempre, these are arthropods, no? So they actually possess an open type of circulation. So tatandaan nyo na, for open type of circulation, no, it has something to do with the movement, of blood, in the blood through the blood vessels for circulation or for distribution. The rest are actually closed type. Okay. So next. Earthworms do not have hard skeletons attached to muscles, yet they are able to move, no, from one place to another efficiently. What is responsible for the locomotion on earthworms? A. Air pressure. B. Parapodia. C. Hydrostatic skeleton. D. Setae. Okay lang. So, not sure. Sige lang, no problem. Make mga question marks. Okay, the correct answer is hydrostatic skeleton. Remember, pag nakita locomotion of earthworms, hydrostatic is skeleton. Kakaiba kasi yung setae. Although setae kasi is part ng anatomy, no, ni earthworm. Okay? Hydrostatic skeleton or hydroskeleton is a skeleton supported by fluid pressure. Okay? And these skeletons are common among simple invertebrate like earthworms. And this volume of fluid, no, in the body cavity surrounded by muscle can actually facilitate their locomotion or motility or movement. Okay, so that is hydrostatic skeleton. And remember that earthworm is an organism under phylum Annelida, segmented worm including leeches, which of course facilitates anticoagulation naman si leeches. So pag nakita sa board exam, anticoagulation, leeches. Okay? Ayan. So kung ito endoskeleton, no, bones inside the human body. So we can actually move that. Exoskeleton, no, the shell outside a snail can also facilitate their movement. While for earthworm, water pressure, the fluid, no, in their cavity, hydrostatic skeleton facilitates earthworms movement. Okay? Ano pa? Yun lang naman. Hermaphrodite. No? So, of course, the presence, no, of male and female sex organs. Okay? Despite of the diversity we see among living organisms somehow, they still show unified qualities that bind them together. Which among this is not a thematic characteristic of living organism? A. Cellular organization. B. Molecular basis of inheritance. C. Photosynthesis. D. Reproduction. Napaka-obvious ng sagot. Okay, what's the answer, teachers? Sabi ko, baka obvious na sagot, wala nang sumagot. Okay, sige. Alright, remember, we're talking about characteristics of living organisms. And this characteristic is not present of all living organisms because these are only exclusive to the autotrophs, and that is photosynthesis. Remember that animals, although living organisms, do not photosynthesize. So the answer here is photosynthesis. So A, cellular organization, we have order. We have level of biological organization, right? Cell, tissue, organ system, organism. That is your level of biological organization. Molecular basis of inheritance talks about your genetics and heredity. Something to do with the passing of genes from parents to offsprings, and these genes contain the traits, right? Question, how do you call the other name for gene? Yeah, by majors. Other name for gene? That is your allele. Yes, your allele is another name for your gene. Who is the father of genetics? A basic question, di ba? Who is the father of genetics? Of course, that is Gregor Mendel. What organism did he use in his experiment? Sige, what organism did he use? That is correct, no? P. Okay? Pisum sativum. Okay, kaya lang medyo sumablay doon na Staghinus, no? Pisum should be in capitalized. Alright, it's okay, no? Pisum sativum is the scientific name. Okay? Ano pa? Ano ang trabaho ni Gregor Mendel? What is the profession of Gregor Mendel? Father? Or it's actually a monk or priest. Yes. Isa siyang, paano sa Pilipino, mongha ba? Yun yun. Okay? And of course, reproduction is another characteristics of life. Living organisms should be able to replicate if they are in the same species. Pag magkaiba ng species, pwedeng mag-reproduce. However, the offspring is not viable. The offspring is not fertile. Therefore, we need to have the same species for the father. Ayan. Okay, next. Sige, next question. Sige, we'll have another last 5 questions. No? Then, tutuloy na natin sa susunod. Okay, there is always a complementarity between structures and functions among living organisms. Which of the following does not show the relationship? A, hundreds of mitochondria in the muscle cell. B, more and larger water vacuoles in the plant cells than in animal cells. C, mucus glands in the stomach lining. D, number of red blood cells and thermoregulation. Okay. Which of the following does not show a relationship? Wala siyang pinakitang relationship. So that is letter. Okay. Okay, here, no? So it's actually letter D, the number of red blood cells and thermoregulation. So it does not show relationship. So here, hundreds of mitochondria in a muscle cell in terms of our energy source. Remember, diba? As mitochondria is considered as the powerhouse of the cell. Then more and larger water vacuoles is needed by plants, no? That's why we call them as storage vacuole or food vacuole than in animal cells, which is simply vacuole. Okay, and then mucus glands in the stomach lining. Well, the number of red blood cells has nothing to do with our thermoregulation. Okay, next. Yan. So goal of thermoregulation is that maintain correct body temperature range in order to maximize metabolic efficiency. Okay, yung ating reduce of oxygen use, protect enzyme function, and then reduce calorie expenditure. Okay? Okay, so for temperature regulations, the organ involved, of course, we have your brain, no, hypothalamus, and the skin. So if the temperature increases, then nerve messages get sent to the skin, and it responds in 2 ways, either vasodilation and sweating. Okay, so if the temperature decreases, the nerve impulse gets sent to the skin. It responds by vasoconstriction, goosebumps, and shivering. That's why this has something to do with our response to stimuli, response to the temperature. No, syempre kapag mainit, okay, we tend to sweat. No, well, for if the temperature, for example, is too cold, we tend to have goosebumps and shiver. So having a steady body temperature at 37 degrees, no, it's a normal body temperature, ensures that all the chemical reaction can take place at an optimum rate in the body and sustain life. That's why we have the term in biology, the balanced internal environment, which we call the, what do you call it? If there's an equilibrium in the internal environment, we call it as homeostasis. That's correct. Okay, next. Okay, for to the last question. Which of the following are the breathing organs in insects? Okay, sinabi ko na to kanina. Okay? So, bibilangan ko na para hindi ako na baka umabot tayo alas 12 dito. So, of course, these are your tracheal tubes or tracheal lungs. So, these are the breathing organs in insect. Question, what is the major breathing organ of humans? What is the major breathing organs of humans? Of course, these are your blanks, no? So, huwag kakalimutan. How about the, wow, may palang. So, how about the, how do you call it? The voice box. The voice box. Okay, the voice box is your larynx. Kaya very careful tayo sa larynx natin. Pwede ito magkaroon ng inflammation called laryngitis, especially common to teachers because they tend to, talk and talk and talk during the class discussion. Okay? Third to the last question. Ayan, the tracheal system, okay, as part of the breathing system, a breathing organ of our insects. Okay? Next question. Third to the last. Sexual reproduction is common to all living organisms. Which of the following organisms does not practice asexual reproduction? A. Bacteria. B. Paramecium. C. Plants. D. Squid. Okay. It does not do asexual reproduction, that is squid. No, the rest, bacteria can do sexual and asexual reproduction. Paramecium, asexual can do asexual. Plants even, di ba? Ano yung mga asexual reproduction natin sa plants, no? We have grafting, no? We also have marketing, no? These are some asexual reproduction. Ano to kung nagkakagulo sa chat box? Ay. Alright. Okay, sige. Next, okay, ayan, no, reproductive strategy, no? Tricky mating usually ginagamit, no, ng mga squids, no? The large males dicker squid mates with female, 2 sperm storage sites, sperm size difference. Okay? Okay, second to the last question. The regeneration of lost body parts is common among the lower form of animals. Which of the following animals can generate lost parts? Frogs, planaria, turtles, volvox. Okay, what's the answer? Okay, syempre, they can regenerate, no? Lost parts, these are planaria. Question, anong phylum ng planaria? What phylum does it belong? Ha? Sure kayo? Kasi magkatunog, hindi. It's actually phylum. Phylum, kingdom ang plantains. Phylum, Platy, helminthes, or flat earth. Ano ang phylum ng frog? Sige nga, tanungan nga natin, isa-isahin natin ito saglit. Before we go to the last question. What's the phylum of frog? Phylum? Yes, phylum Chordata. Turtles, of course, phylum Chordata. Volvox, what phylum is what kingdom is Volvox? Anong kingdom siya? Volvox is what type of organism? It's an algae. No? So therefore, kung algae siya, anong kingdom niya? What kingdom? Pag algae. Kingdom, letter P. Okay. Naku, natutulog na ata kayo ha. Kingdom ano, second to the last na to. Kingdom Protista. Okay, good. Alright, so yun lang naman. Last na. Is turtle an amphibian or a reptile? Is turtle an amphibian or a reptile? Okay, it's a reptile. So pag nakita sa board exam, that is a reptile. Question, how do you, where does turtle live? Saan nakatira mga turtle? Is it water or land? Sa shell niyo po. Okay, basically, turtle is the water, while land, how do you call those land-dwelling, kasama or katulad ng mga turtles? We call them the tortoise. Okay, so tortoise is to land. Usually may ganyang analogy. No? Tortoise is to land, turtle is to water. So example ng ating, example ng turtle in the Philippines is your pawikan. No? Okay, so that is a sea turtle. Okay, so yeah, so this is part of your planaria. Okay, Ninja, hindi na yan. Okay? So this is part of the planary and sexual reproduction, no? Okay, so that is part, I mean, an example of asexual reproduction. We also have C-star. Pag nakita naman to, regeneration. So pag nakita sa board exam, what particular asexual reproduction process, regeneration. Okay? Itong arm niya, pwede siyang mag-regenerate into an entire C-star, regenerating from one arm to one arm. So again, C-star, regeneration. Okay? Anong phylum ang C-stars again? Letter E, phylum. Mahaba ba yan? Phylum. Ni ba yan? Okay, echino. Okay, echinodermata. Okay? So last question. The breathing organs found in leaves are called stomata. The size of stomata is regulated by the guard cells, which condition of the guard cells can favor the opening of the stomata. A cell become turgid due to the entrance of potassium ions, followed by the osmotic entry of water. B, exit of water by passive transport. C, increased carbon dioxide in the air spaces. Or letter D, lower turgor pressure. Okay. Yan, gagaling nila. Yeah, okay ha. Ito common question to, no, sa Biomajorship. Pag nakita ninyo yung stomata being regulated at ano ang kondisyon so that na condition na girdle that can favor the opening of the stomata, ang isasagot niyo dito ay potassium ions. Pag nakakita kayo ng potassium ions, cell become turgid due to the enters potassium ion. Yan yun, no? For the opening of the stomata followed by the osmotic entry of water. Remember, hindi ko alam kung naglagay ako. Ayan. Remember, meron tayong dalawa. The turgid and the flaccid. Okay? Pag turgid cell, okay, water enters by osmosis vacuole cells and pushes against the cell wall. So basically, hypotonic solution, it tends to swell, right? So turgor pressure builds in the cell and causes osmosis to stop because of the rigid cell wall. Okay? While plants will shrink, shrivel, when cells lose water through osmosis. Remember, pag nakita sa board exam, what is osmosis? That is diffusion in water. Okay? Diffusion, which means, no, the area, the movement from the area of greater concentration to lower concentration. Okay? So that is for flaccid cell. Okay? So yun lang. That ends, no, actually, the first part. Actually, kasi mahaba tong slide ko. This is 400 slides. So we will have part 2. And then part 10, hopefully part 4 for the final coaching. So I'll start from here. I hope meron kayong natutunan at meron nadagdag sa inyong kaalaman sa Biomajorship. I'm actually in the process of collating pa some important questions. I call it important questions that will help you know in your board exam. I hope you learned a lot. And before we leave, baka pwede naman tayo mag-document kahit haggard na tayo. Documentation. I wanted to see, and I'll try to answer some. Ang bilis eh. Siglet. Ano ba yung mga question? May question ba tayo? Siglet, tignan natin. Gabi-gabi na po ba to, sir? Tomorrow, nasa airport kasi ako. Pero kung may time ako bukas at nakarating ako sa biyahe na mas maaga, pwede. Pero kasi ang flight ko, hindi, bukas ng gabi pa. Pero ang flight ko kasi is 4 AM ng Friday. So, pero yung Friday night, posible magkakaroon tayo. Saglit, ang bilis nyo. Ang dami nyong saglit. Tanong. Okay, sige. Friday night, sige. Gagawa tayo ng paraan. Hindi pa ako, hindi pa ako pa o siguro. Kami na nagdesisyon. Okay, sige. Thank you so much, sir. Oy, thank you din sa mga nag-join sa atin ng mga Pero I think from PRMSU si Jade. Tama ba, Jade? From PRMSU San Marcelino ka rin? Para lang meron lang tayong GTKY saglit. Para alam ko kung sino yung mga nagdirito. Okay, good. So, ibig sabihin, congratulations ng PRMSU, nag-CPE siya. So, sa atin pa rin ang kanyang performance. Ibig sabihin, Primso San Marcelino pa rin. So, thank you for coming here. Jade, thank you so much. Meron pang isa kanina. Si Mika. Jade, kilala mo ba yung isa, yung Mika? Hindi ko siya kilala, sorry. Sino yung nakakakilala kay Mika? Hala, wala daw, hindi niya daw kilala. Sino sa inyo ang nagpapasok kay Mika? Sino yung Mika? Yung kaninang may mga camera, hindi ko siya matandaan eh. Okay, walang umaamin. Sige lang. Okay, no problem. Tapos si Sir Ralph. Sir Ralph, Sir Ralph, pwede bang pa-PM ako saan ka graduate? Hindi ako sure kung sa Prince ka rin po ba? Or other school? At least, si LSU po, okay po. BSed ba kayo, sir, or parang units din? BSed din po ba kayo, sir? Yan, para at least alam natin, no? O, yung mga kakilala natin. Bakit ano ang problema sa CLSU? Sige, mag-document na rin po tayo. Sige, 1, 2, 3. Sige, mag-aanos na lang ako, Okay, 1, 2. Diba? Parang saya ni Renzo. Say thank you so much. Sige, let's stop recording.